Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. You're watching my channel's monthly compendium for the month of December 2024. Case file number 1961, written by Echoing Psyche. The case of the clock's quack, when time took a snack. I got home really late, more than an hour past midnight, so I decided to order myself a pizza around 1:55 a.m. on Just Eat. The app said it'd be delivered by 2:45 a.m. I was feeling super tired, so I set my alarm for 2:40 a.m. and took a quick nap. The alarm went off and woke me up, but there were no updates in the app. So I called the restaurant, and after they confirmed my order, I waited another 17 minutes before heading down to the front door to grab the pizza. The delivery guy handed it over, saying, "Long day, huh?" And I just laughed and said, "Yeah, tell me about it," before heading back inside. I ate my pizza and nachos while watching Dandadin, episode 4. I remember it was 3:43 on my phone when I finished. Since it was almost 4 a.m., I decided to set my alarm for at least 4 hours later. I went to the restroom. But when I checked my phone, a few minutes after finishing my business, the lock screen said 1:43. I checked Google, my analog watch, my laptop, smartwatch, tablet, even my kitchen timer. Everything said 1:43. I honestly wouldn't have thought much of it if I hadn't set the alarm and checked my phone before bed. Case file number 1962, written by Ominous Sin. Comfort in chaos where nightmares stand. Every time in the dark, I would see things, especially when I wake up. I chalked it up to sleep paralysis. Eventually, we moved from the house and I thought it would be over. However, once we arrived at the new house at night in literally a different country, I noticed some weird shape on the roof in the dark. I chalked it up to being a dish on the roof. Next morning, however, there was absolutely nothing there that could have made that shape. When I was younger, around the age of 5, along the same age as my friend who was over that day, we were all alone in the house, no parents at all. We were playing and watching our favorite cartoons, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Tom and Jerry. When suddenly, we had the urge of hunger, so we did what little kids would, we made toast. Exactly that, toast. Popped it into the toaster, made toast. Put it on a plate, and as the good little kids we were, we cleaned up the mess. Pulled the toaster back under the cupboards, cleaned the toast bits off the counter, and went to lounge to finish the toast we made. Now the weird part is when we decided to put our plates away. My friend was ahead of me and stopped right at the entrance. I was confused and stood there, asking her what was wrong. There on the counter, the toaster was sitting along with the toast crumbs all over the counter. Being kids, we didn't know how or why, nor questioned it. All we did was put the plates in the sink, clean the crumbs again, put the toaster away again. We only got upset when my parents came home. My mom was upset with the toast crumbs and toaster on the counter. Never happened again after we moved to another part of the small town. Another experience. This was during my early teens, around 14, when we moved completely out of the town, and I was in my room. During this time, I was suffering social anxieties due to misdiagnosis of ADD, and being on the pills for so long, which severely degraded my social skills. I woke up in a sense on my back, a black figure hovering over me. I needed to move, but couldn't. They just stood there. I knew the small flashlight was on my nightstand. I heard it say my name before I could move and put on the light. I did research online and chalked that up again to being sleep paralysis, which was easily explainable. Now, the creepiest story. So I was 18, the grand number. I was asleep. I woke up. For some reason I was moving. I just sat up, eyes wide, moving, living, breathing awake. Wide awake, and I don't know how to explain it, but there were these two things at the end of my bed. I saw it for like 2 seconds, sitting upright there, staring at them. They weren't figures. They were like these poles with some kind of material I can only compare to a large quilt. Bunched up, bloodied, tied with really strong rope akin to rebar, also bloodied, and the source of the blood. The one on the left was white, the one on the right was a sandy cardboard color. They were just there, and in a flash like a child, as I saw them, adrenaline courses through me. I laid back down faster than a bullet, throwing the blankets over my face and under the blankets. I shot out my arm, grabbed the bedside lamp, and flicked it on, just like that. Then I pulled the blankets off, and the bloodied pole things were gone. I will be honest, I was in all hell in shock. I just sat there in shock, staring quietly, before, I don't know why, I just started to cry. I just let it all out and cried. I avoided the end of my bed, and slunk over to my parents' room. Normally I wouldn't seek comfort from my mom, but my dad was in another country for work. I was legitimately sobbing ugly. She keeps asking me what was wrong, but I just said I saw something. Eventually, I calmed down. She let me go to sleep in her room, and I had to go to school that day in an hour. The thing that scares me the most is I can't find an explanation. That seriously couldn't be sleep paralysis, as I was moving constantly. And the last story, calming. I love to think about it, after that scare of the bloody poles. I woke up on my side, but I didn't move and didn't know why I woke up. I kept my eyes shut, but I could feel my blanket slowly being pulled and tucked, like I was a kid being tucked into bed, and the movements only stopped once I moved and made it clear I was awake. Did you know I have a Patreon? Over there you can get a ton of cool perks, including my content ad-free, my Stephen King carry currently, although I intend to do more, reading and reaction, and early access to my weekly and monthly compilations. Check it out in the link in the description if that interests you. Now to the stories. Case file number 1963, written by Gisher John 24. The light turned green, but fate intervened. I still think about it. I don't understand why or what happened, considering I'm, still here. In 1991, me and my then girlfriend were at a busy intersection outside of town on a state road where there is a traffic light. Four-way light, basically. We get to the road. The crossway traffic is plentiful. Wouldn't say like city traffic, but a very high traffic country and state road. We get to the light. It turns red. I stop for the red light. We see cars, semis, trucks, etc. crossing through going about 65 miles per hour. We probably wait for about 2 minutes and the light changes to green for us to go through. My intention is to go straight across the busy intersection. Because of what happens after, I remember vividly that I put my foot on the accelerator to go forward. I was a young kid then, 16. I wasn't afraid to gun it. So I accelerated what I would call almost a burnout, where I would leave tire marks. I had a Cobra at the time. Anyway, I remember accelerating, but the thing is, I did not move. 1 second later, a semi blasts through the intersection, running the red light, going probably 65. It comes inches from hitting my car. My car seemed to accelerate, but only at a crawl. Even though I remember pretty much gunning it, we just sat there in shock as a semi nearly hit me. And while we sat there, almost in the middle of the intersection, we just looked at each other, not saying anything, just in shock and knowing how lucky we were. The engine itself was not stalled. I was able to accelerate normally and go along my way. I felt lucky my car magically didn't accelerate at the inopportune time. Would have been instantly killed for sure, getting hit broadside. We talked about it the next day, but we just came to the conclusion we were supernaturally saved that day, because I can't explain it. Any other stories like this out there? Peace to all. Case file number 1964, written by Finicky Philanthropy. With a call to the darkness, I open the door. I have a friend from college, and according to him, he's had something attached to him since early childhood. Typical scary dark figure, made of blackness type of thing, that'll interfere with his life, every once in a while. Most commonly, he won't see it, but something will smash his blinds to the side suddenly, while he's in a room, or there'll be 3 or 5 loud knocks on his walls and doors. What made me believe him before I saw anything is that he did 6 years in the Navy, and has had friends before, during, and after his time that I've seen it. 2 times and 2 different people, or heard or seen its interaction, a handful of times and people. My friend has had a lot of weird crap happen to him over the years. Not necessarily related to whatever he's got going on with whatever this is. Anyways, one of the times he was telling me about this, and we'd actually called up a friend of his who'd seen it. I was pretty damn skeptical, newly a non-believer in religion, and brash. I spoke out loud and told it to attach itself to me because I thought the idea was ridiculous. And my friend was all for it, I think because no one had done that before, and he could definitely tell I thought it was bullcrap. Since then, weird things happen every once in a while. In the week directly after that, there was a case where lights kept being on when I got home. One in particular was a touch-activated lamp that was stuffed in a work-in-progress clutter that was slightly sectioned off by an improv wall. That stood out because when I eventually went to unplug the thing after a few times of that happening, it wasn't plugged in. I had something hit the front door hard when I was sitting 5 feet from it at my desk. Think a full-on kick to the door, but when I opened it, the glass and metal screen door in front of the hit door was still closed, intact, and locked. The same day, the door handle to the front door sounded like it was being interfered with or tapped. But again, the glass screen door was still shut and locked, and protecting the main door from the outside. Once, in the front door, bedroom, bathroom, work desk hallway, I'd had pretty bad dread set in. If you haven't experienced it before, you can't approximate it by having feared about something before. Dread is a really particular thing. I went about turning all the lights on in the place and closing the blinds, checking the closet, etc. And when I was in the hallway, I started hearing heavy, ragged breathing over my shoulder. Nothing was there, obviously, and I ended up leaving that night and spending it at my friend's house. At this point, it's also noteworthy to point out that very often now, when something happens to him, most of the time something will happen to me, and one of us tells the other pretty much immediately. A weird one was around March 2020. My friend was moving places and stayed at my place for a night. We slept in the same bed. Before the gay jokes, we're bros and both gay, and not attracted to each other, so there's no danger there. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night, which is uncommon enough, and I remember the room was weirdly dark. And I could see eyes looking into the room from outside the window at the head of the bed, and the walls of the room had weird patterns all over them. I woke him up, and by the time I did, things were more or less normal. But I didn't go back to sleep for a couple hours, and wrote what happened while I was still awake. Maybe 10 minutes after it happened. I've had more things happen since I told whatever it is to attach itself to me, and to be honest, I've got no idea. I don't do drugs, and nothing has ever happened to me when I've been drinking. I'm a skeptical, generally non-believing facts versus feelings type of guy. I don't like that whatever has happened has happened. I don't know, and I probably won't ever know. Oh well, now I look like a nut. Case file number 1965, written by Delicious Moment 2224. The haunted house's blackened soul were not in control. One day, I went to spend a weekend with some friends at another friend's house, which was in a very isolated spot in the middle of the forest, in a village in the Portuguese countryside. It was a get-together among friends, so we had some alcoholic drinks, but it was still early in the night, so no one was drunk yet. In the middle of the hangout, a friend and I decided to go for a walk in the area and take some Polaroid photos, playing a bit with the flash in the dark. The only access to my friend's house was through a dirt road, so to reach the main road, we had to walk along that dirt path, taking photos along the way. When we reached the main road, we decided to turn left and follow a street that led into a residential area. As soon as we entered that side road, we came across a house that caught both of our attention. Not because there was anything visibly wrong with it, but it felt like the aura of the house hit us both. We looked at each other and said exactly that the house had a strange energy. We ignored it and kept walking along the path with a few curves. After walking for about 30 minutes, we started seeing a familiar structure. A bridge that was very close to the entry of the side road we initially chose. We were a bit confused because it felt like we had made a 360 turn and ended up back at the starting point. With this realization, we decided to head back to the house, as the atmosphere was getting a bit strange and confusing. The next day, at the end of the day, we decided to go for another walk at night, doing the exact same route as the night before. We followed exactly the same path, passed by the mysterious house, and decided to take a photo to remember the moment. Considering that we'd taken several other photos along the way, as we moved forward, our perspective of the path seemed very different from the previous day. This time, there were no leftward curves, and it looked like there were more bushes. Then, out of nowhere, we realized that the road led to a giant asphalt slope, going up to the top of the village and into another residential area. Once again, we were confused by what was happening, and without panicking, we decided to calmly turn back and head home. When we got back to the house, we looked through all of the photos we'd taken during the walk, and to our amazement, the photo of the mysterious house was the only one that came out completely black. There could very well be a technical explanation for this, but if it was a coincidence, it was a very well planned one. For me, the strangest part of this experience was the fact that both of us, not just one, were experiencing these events and these sudden shifts in perspective. And of course, when we got back to my friend's house, we immediately told everyone what happened. But neither of us could tell the story coherently, and I'm sure they just thought we were starting to go crazy. Case file number 1966, written by Shrinky666. The pouch that puzzled, my mind did fuddle. I went shopping for my husband for a pouch he can use for his new trimmer and attachments. As I was looking through the bags that were next to the travel size items, I picked up one black bag that was fairly cheap. I opened it, looked inside, and there was white crumpled up paper in it. Zipped it back and continued looking in a different area to see if we could find something else. When I exhausted my efforts, and have not moved this bag from my hands at all, or picked anything else up for that matter, I went to unzip the bag again, but I couldn't. It had a plastic tab holding the zipper in place so you couldn't open it. But I had just opened the same bag a few minutes earlier. I stared at the bag for a good few seconds before deciding, F it, I'm getting it. I went to my truck, took the tab off, and lo and behold, white paper. Now I'm sitting in the truck wondering what the F just happened and had to share this with everyone. Just a mind-perplexing situation. Case file number 1967, written by Bell-Eyed Shadow. Shadows in the Sun, and a Little Girl's Fun. Worked at a cemetery for many years as a lawn mower and have 3 weird experiences. One of the cemeteries I worked at was an entirely flat, open space. They didn't allow headstones that stood above the ground. Everything was flat. We're talking this place was acres and acres of just grass. Well, when I would work, I would wear headphones and listen to music. Every week, without fail, there was one headstone that, when I drove near it with the lawnmower, my music would shut off. Now this was in the days of iPods, and no matter if the thing was fully charged or not, it would shut down. Guess the old man buried there didn't like my taste in music. Same cemetery, different day. I was on the very south part of the cemetery, mowing away, when I looked up and saw a man walking on the north side of the cemetery. That in of itself wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that it was 102 degrees that day, and the guy was dressed in a long black trench coat, black combat boots, black brimmed hat, and long black beard. I stopped and watched him for a minute, but he didn't seem to be looking for a headstone, just walking. I got back to work, and in one instant I was looking at the man, and the next thing, he was gone. He just straight up vanished. Freaked me out. Second cemetery I worked at was much older and had the typical headstones above ground. I had stopped working for lunch and had got into the small shack that housed the bathrooms. As I'm sitting there, I can distinctly hear the voice of a little girl. As I listen, it sounds like she's playing with dolls or stuffed animals. No big deal. I walk outside just to check and see if there was anyone who needs help, and there's no one there. The place is completely empty. Walk back in the shack and I can hear her again. That one didn't freak me out too much because I think whatever it was just enjoying the warm day. Case file number 1968, written by Goofy Boots. Whispers in the stars over the forgotten hour. 4 years ago, my boyfriend took me on our first date one night after I got out of work. He drove me to a small town on Lake Michigan about 45 minutes away from the Grand Rapids, where we lived at the time, and out to a very tall sand dune. He and I packed LED hula hoops and a backpack with sweatshirts and a blanket. I brought a bottle of white wine. He had a 6-pack of his favorite beer, Founders All Day IPA. We parked at the bottom of the dune in the parking lot at around 11 p.m. It was dark and the sky was clear, so we could see tons of stars. We trekked up the dune using our phones as flashlights. Once at the top, we laid out a blanket and sat down, talking for a while. I remember turning music on my phone, and we were both dancing and spinning our LEDs, and then, absolutely nothing. The next thing I knew, I woke up, gasping for breath, at the top of the dune with him laying next to me. He asked me what I was doing, and I told him I didn't know. "What happened? What time is it?" I asked, but he didn't know. He said he didn't remember laying down, and I know that I wasn't tired when he got up there. I know I didn't lay down and fall asleep. I frantically grabbed the bottle of wine, expecting it to be empty, but it wasn't even opened. None of his beers were open either. We checked our phones and it was almost 5 in the morning. Neither of us had any recollection of what we had done for the last 5 hours. We flew down that giant dune, and when we got to his car, realized we had left the keys at the top of the dune. He told me to stay in the car, which was parked under a light, and he would be right back. I remember sitting in the passenger seat, looking into the woods, feeling and knowing something was just outside the light, watching me. He finally came down with the keys, and we started driving home in silence. He turned on music, but I couldn't hear it. I felt paralyzed until I randomly burst into tears, hyperventilating, completely inconsolable. He tried to get me to calm down, but I couldn't. I begged him to pull into a Walmart parking lot. When he asked me why, I told him I needed to be around other humans and in lights, so he did. We sat in the parking lot for an hour. Neither of us really had much to say. I think we both knew what happened to us. We're still together, but we haven't talked about it in years. Just typing this out brought tears to my eyes and gave me anxiety. Case file number 1969, written by Randonaughty. The artist's flow, but where'd the paint go? I'm a bit of an artist, or at least I try, and I'm currently painting the windows next to a friend's front door in a Halloween theme, so that she has a little more privacy when people are at the front door. This is my 3rd day on this project, almost done. Okay, here goes. So to start, I am fully sound of mind. It is 10:32 a.m. as I write this, and it happened about 5 minutes ago. I've only had a small breakfast and 1 cup of coffee. I only say this to speak to my level-headedness and awareness. I'm now at my friend's house trying to wrap up my painting. I dip my paintbrush into more paint and go to apply it to the window. There was a heavy amount of paint on the brush, and as the brush makes contact with the window, a chickpea-sized blob of navy blue paint drops. As I watch the drop leave the paintbrush, it is like everything slows down in slow motion, and I have the time to think to myself, oh crap, I'll have to clean this up. I look down to the concrete floors, and there's no splat of paint to be found. I inspected the surrounding floor myself, the window pane that I was painting, and my chair. I inspect every possible surface that this drop of paint could have conceivably and inconceivably landed on, and it is nowhere to be found. After my search was ended with inconclusive results, I said to myself, neat, and came here to share. 2 days later, there is still no paint splatter to be found. The painting has been finished. The clothes that I was wearing have been inspected. The floors have been scrubbed. I may have accidentally dropped another dollop or two of paint, which did land on the floor as expected. I'm at a loss. This is easily the most difficult to argue experience I've had, which aligns with the glitch phenomenon right before my eyes. Happy living. Case file number 1970, written by Wasabi Princess. The dials twist with an ominous mist. I live in a house with my mom and my dog. Earlier today, my mom left the house and went out. I heard her leave, so I'm now alone in the house with the dog. About 20 minutes later, I went downstairs to put some dirty clothes in the washing machine. I put the clothes and detergent in, closed the door, and turned the machine on. The machine has a dial that you turn to select your desired washing setting, then you press the on button. It definitely started washing because I heard it make the usual noises and saw the clothes start to spin in the machine. I then got my dog ready to go on a walk, left the house, locked the doors, and went to walk my dog. When I got home an hour later, my mom was still out and had not come home yet. This is 100% confirmed. The washing machine was turned off. Not in the sense that the cycle had finished, but the dial had physically been turned to the off setting. I double-checked, and the clothes inside were still soaking wet, meaning the cycle hadn't finished and the machine was turned off mid-cycle. The dial does not turn itself automatically, as it's not that type of machine. The only explanation I can think of is either someone else is or was in the house while I was out and switched it off. This is scary because only my mom and I have keys to the house, or I myself switched it off, which is not something I would have chosen to do as it was literally mid-cycle washing my clothes, and I have no memory whatsoever of doing so. Both of these are very scary to me. Obviously, the possibility of someone else being in the house is terrifying, and also the fact that I may have subconsciously performed an out-of-character action and have no memory whatsoever of doing it. Please note I am 29 female, physically healthy, although I could go to the gym a bit more often, and have never been formally diagnosed with mental health issues. Also, it's been a while since then, and I've run the machine many times, and it's always worked. Case file number 1971, written by Big Trust Come See Me. Ontario's Sorrow, and a meeting that shook my tomorrow. I was driving south from northern Ontario one year. I'm talking up near Hearst on my way to Toronto when I was at university. If anybody is unfamiliar with the area, northern Ontario is a vast spread of Canadian Shield, rocky landscape, and dense brush. A bunch of relatively small mining towns spread out all over like a 300-kilometer radius. It's kinda eerie, and Highway 11 is the most depressing stretch of highway I've ever been on. For anybody familiar with it, it's close to midnight, and I'm past Kirkland Lake, cut off, and decide to stop at the next stop and diner, whatever, to get a coffee and stretch my legs. I pull off right near Englehart, peel into the Tim Hortons, and go to the bathroom. After I come out, I grab a coffee and a snack and sit down to eat it. About 10 minutes go by, and this old lady sits down at my table. There is nobody else at the shop, apart from the ladies behind the counter. At first, she didn't say anything. Just looked at me, and she could probably tell I was a little freaked out. Finally, she just went, "Truss, it's so good to see you. How have you been? How is Dad's name and Mom's name? And has Sister's name finished up with school?" I started to shake. I was so nervous and asked her how she knew who I was and that I would be there. I'd never been there before. She got super quiet, again, just smiling, and told me they'd been keeping an eye on me. And then she left, and that was the end of it. I don't know who she was or how she knew me, but at midnight in a little bum-frick town in northern Ontario, in the middle of the night, some old lady knew my entire life. It was enough to freak me out for the next little while. Case file number 1972, written by Cynical Spunk. The Invisible Remote with a Chilling Note. I was binging the last 3 episodes of a series today. Before the last episode started, I ran to the bathroom and came right back. I went to grab my remote and it wasn't on the couch. Okay, no big deal. I fluffed out my blanket, checked between the armrests and cushions where it always falls. Behind the cushions under the couch, nothing. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the other living room, outside on the patio, nothing. I'm a freak, so I FaceTimed my mom and brother, they were together, and asked them to be my second pair of eyes, as moms can find anything. True. They thought I was crazy, but I showed them with my hands, running between the cushions and checking everywhere in the house. My cushions don't come off the couch, and I can only stick maybe 4 inches of my hand in there before I'm hitting crumbs. My brother even said, "Man, that's weird." However, my mom said, "Just sit down and calm down, you'll find it." Right when she said that, I put my hand down and just like that, it was right between the cushion and the armrest. It was visible. I felt the biggest chill crawl up my spine that scared me so hard that I started ugly crying. My mom thought it was hilarious, but my brother could tell something wasn't right. He watched me stick my hand there multiple times. He knew. Case file number 1973, written by Boo Radley as Gray. Escape and Return, Lessons to Learn. I was returning home in the late afternoon on an average day. There were no other cars in the driveway, so I braced myself when I opened the door for my family's large dogs, a German Shepherd and a Chow, to run out when I opened the front door. I was thoroughly unsuccessful, feeling them both sprint past me the second the door was opened, enough for them to break out. I immediately turned and ran back to the front yard, calling for them. "Bear, Hans, come on guys, Bear, Hans, let's go, come on, we need to go in." My panic was increasing exponentially as I ran up and down the street. We lived on a kind of suburban neighborhood side road with little traffic, but close enough to busier streets, a park we frequented, and an elementary school that I urgently needed to find and return our slightly reactive, large dogs to the house. After maybe 7 minutes of frantically calling and running up and down the street, I decided to throw my purse and a few other things I was carrying in the house, grab their leashes and some treats, and head back out. My mind was racing, thinking of all the ways this could get even worse. I opened the front door to find the dogs hanging out in the living room, looking up as they had been waiting for me to come in. I froze, and my heart stopped as they ran over to greet me. I knew they had run past me. I felt their 100+ pounds of fur and muscle brush past my calves. I immediately and instinctively knew to turn around and run back after them. They were spoiled jerks who escaped when given the opportunity. They were happily lounging in the living room the whole time I was sprinting and screaming like an idiot up and down the street. Both of our guys have since passed, happened 10+ years ago. So while I still have anxiety around the experience, the universe has ensured I won't forget them. Case file number 1974, written by Desperate Worker 532. Midnight Math busted by Time Warp's Wrath. I worked that week at a barn near my house. I have only 6 kilometers or 3.7 miles to drive there. I drive a Kimco MXU 50cc, so it's really slow. That day I worked the evening shift, so my work ended late. We got our work done at 9:30 p.m. I had promised to visit my friend who lived near that barn. Everything went normally until I left my friend's house at 10 p.m. When I left, it was really dark already, Finland, so I didn't see really far. But I've driven that road so many times that I know it really well. There is another barn on my route. I always check if I can see cows in the field next to the road, from my friend's house to the point where you can see barn's lights over the fields. And thanks to those lights at the barn, you can see the whole barn is 1.5 or 0.93 miles. And for me, it takes about 2 minutes to drive that. When I left to go to that barn in 2 minutes, I drove past 2 houses really close to the road just before the barn. You can't drive past them without noticing. I checked if some cows were close to the road, and there were 2. I saw them a little bit when my headlights illuminated their white hair. Then I continued my drive normally, until 10 minutes went by, and I didn't get up to the one uphill almost immediately after the barn. Then I saw those barn lights again after one turn. I drove past those 2 houses and that barn again, and those cow fields. There were those 2 cows again. And after that, I got normally uphill, and the rest of the drive home went normally with no problems. Still really confused about what happened. I wasn't tired because my sleep schedule was so that I was up really late and slept for a long time, so it's not from tiredness. Case file number 1975, written by Undefined Spoon. The Midnight Dog and a Trucker's Blog. Both occurred when I used to be a truck driver in 2012 to 2013. I was 23 at the time. First story. Once I was at a truck stop, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. I parked my truck, and as I'm waiting by the trucks fueling up, I see a guy with a purple truck who doesn't quite look right, sort of stumbling. I ask him if he's okay. He sort of slowly stares at me, then just falls down. At that exact moment, his truck just shuts off. I run over to him, and he's out cold. Other drivers come over, and one of them knows a lot more about this sort of stuff. He says his heart stopped, so he starts doing compressions. Someone calls 911. The ambulance gets there and tries to bring him back, but can't. They call and get authorization or whatever to call time of death. I asked the workers if they wanted me to move his truck to a parking lot, and they said sure. I see he has a little dog in the passenger seat. I hand him off to a worker. As I do so, this really creepy feeling comes over me. I've seen death several times, far more graphic and gory than some old guy falling over from a heart attack, but I feel like someone was in the cab with me. Freaked me the hell out. I try to crank the truck, but it will not start. There's about a half a tank at least. When the guy first collapsed, the first thing someone did was cut the fuel pump off and put it back into the fuel pump, because he sort of fell almost under the plumbing fuel filler, automatically shutting off the passenger side pump. Trucks fill up from both sides, meaning the fuel was pumping maybe a minute or 2, so it had gotten, I'd guess, about 10 to 20 gallons. So the truck did not run out of fuel. It was as if the truck died when he died. I could not get the damn thing to fire. Didn't even try to just fire, just cranked and cranked. I could see if the truck had cooled down, but it was still very warm, and a warm truck is easy to start. This was also in the summertime. I'm sure there's a logical reason here. Just sort of freaked me out that the truck died at the exact moment its owner died. Told them it wouldn't crank, call a tow truck, and I got the hell out of there. Second story. I normally don't drive at night, and never late at night. It was wintertime, but no snow or anything, probably around 8 or 9 p.m. So it had been dark since around 6 or 7. And I'm driving along on a fairly straight stretch of road somewhere in Oklahoma. Visibility was pretty good, and I could see pretty far ahead of me. All of a sudden, I see what looks like a black dog jump from somewhere off the right, across the left lane, then dart back in front of me in the right lane. It looked like a big dog, maybe a Great Dane. Actually reminded me of the Batman dog from Batman the Animated Series, but moved like a panther or something abnormally quick. When it darted back in front, I braced myself. You are taught never to swerve for an animal or even another car, to just simply apply the brakes and ram whatever the obstacle is, as ramming a car is better than flipping over and crushing a car, 80,000-pound load. I didn't have time to brake, but I hit whatever it was hard. The front hood appears to flip up, blocking the windshield for a moment, and flip back down. Keep in mind, truck hoods are hinged at the front and flip forward like a 94 Corvette. I heard the distinct sound of the glass turntable in my microwave slam and rattle around from the impact. At this moment, I figured it must have been a bear of some kind, and a dog isn't going to crush my front end like it seemed to do. The impact has slowed me down a bit, but my first thought is if it was a bear, there may be more. so I keep speed. The hood seems stable. The steering feels fine, so I don't think there's steering or suspension damage. The lights are still somehow working, and all my gauges are showing fine, so I throw on the hazards, keep moving around 30 miles an hour, and keep my eyes glued to the temperature and air pressure gauges. I figure if I'm leaking coolant, I have like 20 gallons in the system before I run out. I get on the CB and yell out that I think I just smashed into a literal black bear on the highway. Saying a bear on the CB usually means a cop, so you should specify a literal black bear, and to watch out for either more or its dead body on the highway. One guy says he had just seen a black dog and he almost ran off the road. I told him that's what I just hit, but it blew apart my front end. I think it was either a really fast bear or maybe a panther or mountain lion. The next truck stop is about 5 miles away. I make it there, pull into the pumps, and assess the damage. Nothing. There is not a scratch anywhere on this truck. I smashed into whatever the hell the thing was. I heard the massive impact, the crunching of the hood on the front end. I saw the front end of my hood very distinctly fly up and back down. The hood was completely intact. The intercooler and radiator had no damage. I had hit nothing. I went over my hours by 2 hours to get the hell out of that state, and as far as I could, into Texas. Later, I found on the internet about an old trucker legend about the black dog jumping out in front of the drivers, causing them to swerve off the road to avoid it. Maybe it knew I wasn't going to swerve and tried to take me out another way. Case file number 1976, written by G isn't 3. In waves they come, acting so dumb. Before I get into the post, I'd like to say that I'm not just missing or imagining things. I'm constantly hyper-aware of my surroundings and pay attention to every little detail of whatever I'm focusing on. It's a bit of a curse and I wish I could turn it off. There are lots of things that I thought was some supernatural bullcrap before I thought or talked about it, and realized that it was just me mistaking something for something else or whatever. I've been working at a fast food chain for 2.5 years now, working part-time before I graduated and full-time now and during previous summers. I've seen a lot of things that absolutely do not make sense. I'm going to start with more minor things and work my way up to bigger things. Customers exclusively come in waves. The restaurant is right next to a busy major interstate freeway with a few casinos and malls around it. The traffic around our restaurant never stops. It's either a lot of cars or bumper-to-bumper cars out to the interstate. So you'd think that it'd be a random amount of customers depending on how much traffic there is. If only. Customers come in waves, usually 3 or 5 at a time. Outside of the early morning, it is never just one customer, unless it's one of our regulars. The NPCs, as some cynical Zoomers might say, come in waves. Like it's a freaking Plant vs. Zombies game. I have a story about this one for sure. The customers that come in these waves are usually completely illogical, both in appearance and their actions. Think like an old white lady in the driver's seat, a 12-year-old in the passenger seat, and a middle-aged black dude in the back. Completely random selections of people every time, and they are never happy. No amount of good customer service will ever make them not irritated and passive-aggressive. Unless we are slammed with customers, I maintain good customer service and a cheery voice. I say hello when they get to the window and communicate with them and tell them to have a great day. Basically, I do a lot more than I have to, and more than most other fast food employees. Still, I'd say 9 out of 10 customers are entirely displeased with me at all times. Sometimes they will clearly go out of the way to piss me off. One of the oddest things that can happen is when they get lost. This usually happens in the rare occurrence when only one customer shows up. A customer gets up to the menu, irritatedly orders an expensive and complex order. I tell them to come to the second window, and then nothing. We have a CCTV camera routed to a monitor that lets us always see what's going on in the drive-thru. The drive-thru is enclosed with high curbs on both sides, and beyond that, there's a chain link fence on one side, either trees and shrubbery, or the restaurant itself on the other. You watch them pull up from the menu and further into the drive-thru, and then they just don't show up. If they backed out, I'd see them, and if I didn't see them, they'd hit the wait plate under the menu, and I'd get a beep on my headset. There's absolutely no way to get out of the drive-thru, short of driving by the window, or backing up, and we'd see or hear you backing up by the menu. This happens at least once a month. The customers act completely differently depending on who's working. It is absolutely bizarre, and everyone has noticed this. It is completely calibrated to piss whoever is on the headset off the most. I have learned to keep a cool and detached state of mind, so as to not get too mad or frustrated with the job. The more frustrated you get, the more you feed into the drive-thru things. There's a night manager who's worked there for 16 years with anger management issues that will actively make something to be pissed off about if there's any reason to be mad. When he comes into work, we immediately get swarmed by a constant barrage of angry customers the entire time he's there. Me and another manager who are in tune with all this spiritual bullcrap enjoy very quiet and relaxed days relative to what others go through, simply by working with the knowledge that our suffering and irritation is their goal. The other day, my parents called me to tell me my foster kitten had died, and as my mood went from good to bad, we immediately got swarmed with customers. For hours, as I was choking back tears. They will change their demeanor, demographic, and orders to adapt to whoever is working. One time, my boyfriend was working the drive-thru late at night, and a lady came through, ordered a number 9 medium. Then immediately after, the same lady orders a number 9 small, as if it was the exact same voice clip, but with a different ending. At the window, it was the exact same lady, like complete doppelgangers. What made me really start losing it, and inspired me to write this all out, was when I started to count how many voices were there, ordering, and how many heads showed up to the window. Sometimes I'll get to the menu, and it's this cacophony of voices that I call the mumbles, that eventually focuses on one of the 20 different voices they'll use, or very clearly 2 people will order, or there will be others talking in the car, and only one person shows up to the window. Their behavior directly correlates with the Schumann resonance. I pay near constant attention to the Schumann, as it affects me very directly every day. When weird stuff happens with it, the customers start freaking out. All this nonsensical bullcrap gets turned up to 11 immediately. Sometimes I wonder if this is known by the people who run these franchises. We make more money, and they get more customers than any other restaurant this side of the state. Still, they constantly demand we cut employees. They never fix anything. They make nonsensical rules that seem to be maximized to cause us employees suffering. I think this place is a farm, and I'm not one of the farmers. It only makes logical sense under the framework of causing me and the other employees as much distress as possible to farm louche. Case file number 1977, written by Throw Raw and Nonomon. Chess set blues, pawns we lose. I, 23 female, live with my husband, 31 male, and a dog. We have a chess set where the board folds in half and holds the pieces inside, with each piece having a respective slot, so you can easily see if one is missing. The board latches and locks when closed. We played often and never lost a piece. Until this happened, apparently. We are both very particular about taking care of the things we have, and we would never ever have put the game away without all the pieces. Other info. The dog does not chew things or steal things. We are the only ones who have ever used the board. A few months ago, we opened it up to play after just playing a couple days prior. One pawn was missing. We were so confused because, like I said before, we would never put away the game with a piece missing. We searched the house up and down for the missing piece, even beyond the area that it reasonably should have been. We never found the piece. We would just use things like a bottle cap or coin as a missing pawn. We just recently moved, and we packed everything ourselves. The missing piece was still nowhere to be found. Cut to today, shortly after moving and getting all unpacked. The chess set has been closed and latched, packed in a box. Today we opened it to play for the first time since we moved. And now 2 pawns are missing. I'm literally having an existential crisis. It's just not possible. Maybe it's a glitch in the Matrix. Maybe my chess set is haunted. Maybe I have a secret stalker chess thief. Who knows? Cheers. Case file number 1978, written by Santos Mamorte. Money Gone Next. A pocketbook mystery that leaves me vexed. I wake up at 5:30 a.m. to get to work, so I tend to pack a few days of medicine in a small pouch in my pocketbook, so I don't have to think about it and get to work faster. A few days before the refill date, I realize there isn't any in my bag, but I don't think too much about it. I've been getting more and more migraines, and maybe I took an extra one after work? I get my refill and only take one in the morning, so I don't have to carry it at all. Fast forward to day 2 of the new prescription, and I'm feeling eye grains, seeing blue flashes, hoping there is one in my pocketbook so I don't have to leave early and take a cab home from work. One rolled right into my hand, and I even looked at it to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. There isn't even supposed to be anything in there. I had even fully emptied the pocketbook and the pouch before the fill date, in case it had fallen out. The next day again, I only take one in the morning, and after lunch my migraines act up again. I reach my hand in the pouch and another rolls into my hand. This happens for the next 4 days. Now the $15 I just got cash back last night has disappeared from my pocketbook. But since these things don't go missing forever, just a few days and they come back, I guess I'll wait and hopefully update when it returns. I'll yell at whatever house fairy is taking these migraine meds away and money from my bag. Case file number 1979, written by Pixel 3. Out of Sight, a tale of digital day and night. So I've had things disappear and reappear on me way later in a weird sort of way. But this one took the cake for me, being the most weird event ever, due to the fact that the phone temporarily vanished both physically and off the GPS map. The day it happened, I was in my house alone and had not left at all. I was wearing a hoodie with a big front pocket. That morning, I was running up and down the stairs between 2 levels of the apartment, doing some tasks. I was on my phone actively texting my friend about some plans to meet later. Since I was checking it frequently, I kept it in the front pocket of my hoodie. I texted my friend, pocketed my phone, and went downstairs to check on my laundry. I did that, then wondered if my friend had replied, and went to grab my phone. It wasn't in my pocket. I was sure I'd just pocketed it, but maybe I forgot and put it down somewhere? I thoroughly checked all 3 of the rooms I'd been in the last few hours, assuming it was just me being forgetful. Nope. Checked again, and no. So I open my laptop and type Google Find My Phone. If you've linked your device, it will show the exact location using GPS, and let you remotely lock it if it's stolen or lost, or make it ring. I use the ringing to locate it all the time when I misplace it in my home. I do this, and Google says, cannot locate device. I don't think anything of it, and I refresh and try again. Same result. I tried this a few more times, and it kept saying, cannot locate device, which is weird because that's never happened before. My phone was charged. I was literally just using it. Wi-Fi connection was stable. Although it uses GPS anyway, so that shouldn't matter. And I hadn't left my house. I can't make it ring because the device couldn't be reached. I checked the rooms again and nothing. I get this feeling it's just gone. Since there's nothing I can do, I decided to give up for a bit. Maybe 15 minutes later, I see an update to the map on my laptop, showing the phone as being in my house. The same second, I hear it start to ring. I run over to the room it's in, and it's right on top of the countertop of the room I checked a bunch of times, in the most obvious, impossible to miss spot. What the heck? Case file number 1980, written by Ashley Mary 096. A beach day mystery that's hard to put underfoot. This happened about 5 years ago, but I'll never forget how insanely confused I was. I also want to note that I'm not a stranger to glitches happening. and I've witnessed cars disappearing with nowhere to go, items disappearing and reappearing in the most obvious places, etc. So the story is, I was on a camping trip with my family in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we took a drive to the beach. We parked in a parking lot and had to cross a busy street before coming up to a wooden bridge and path that led to the sand. As me and my family approached the end of the path, all of the beachgoers had their shoes lined up against the railing. I remember slipping out of my shoes and hoping that they wouldn't be stolen or accidentally taken by someone else, as they were pretty generic. And as I stated, everyone's were all piled together. Me and my family went on about our beach day, went swimming, etc. And I know for a fact no one from my little group left to go back to the car, and everyone stayed together the whole time. Not only that, but my siblings were too young to cross the street alone at that time. My dad has never pulled pranks. And we were leaving and approached the pile of shoes. Lo and behold, my shoes were gone. They were a cheap pair of flip-flops, so I wasn't broken-hearted, but was quite annoyed, as I had to walk across the busy street and through the parking lot barefooted. I remember stepping on rocks the whole way and mildly complaining because it was quite painful. Then when I got back to the car, my shoes were neatly placed directly outside of my car door, as if I had opened the door, placed my feet on the ground, and just slipped out of them. If it were a prank, it couldn't have been done by my family, so the random prankster would have had to know 1, which shoes were mine, and 2, which car was mine, and 3, which door I had gotten out of. And I know for a fact I didn't leave them there myself, due to how uncomfortable the walk was barefoot, as well as having the thought that I hoped my shoes wouldn't go missing in the pile. I was happy to have them back, but totally annoyed it wasn't before the miserable walk across the rocks. Case file number 1981, written by FSR. Granny's otherworldly plea. Clean the floor. Don't let it be. 7 days after my grandmother's passing, I went to her house with my 4-year-old nephew to grab some of my things that happened to be in her house. One of those things was a bag whose leather was crumbling. So when I picked it up from her closet, some of that leather dust fell to the floor. My grandmother was the type of person who thinks that if you make any mess, you have to clean it right away. You're not supposed to let it sit there for ages. Because of that, I immediately said to her, or the idea of her, I don't know, "Don't worry, Granny, I will clean it up." Anyway, before that though, I decided to put my nephew, who was jumping up and down, to watch a cartoon. So he would stay still for a sec while I would get him some food. My grandmother lived with one of her children, so the food in the fridge was fresh and everything. As I'm prepping his food, all of a sudden, my nephew, who 2 minutes ago was all over the place in a good mood, shows up with a concerned look on his face, as if he was weirded out by something. He goes and asks me, "What is this voice?" And I'm like, "What voice?" "This woman." So I go, "What woman?" And he repeats, "This woman." So I go, "Where is she?" And he says, "Here." I'm like, "Where?" And he goes and points out behind my back. Then I ask him, "What is she saying?" "To clean the floor." Case file number 1982, written by Y. Elizabeth Adore. Perfectly aligned, the tale of a banana and time combined. This happened about 10 years ago. My husband, infant daughter, and I lived together in a small apartment. We had a clock on the wall in our living room that we never adjusted for daylight savings time. It had been an hour off for most months. Rather than changing it, we just joked about it all the time. We rarely relied on the analog clock anyway. Plus, eventually, it will be corrected again. One day, I got home from a morning outing with my daughter. I noticed that a banana peel was on the hall on the floor. This was very strange because we did not have any bananas in the house. In fact, we never did. I was quite startled. I sent a text to my husband and asked him if he stopped by home during his shift and possibly dropped a banana peel on the floor. He said he most certainly had not. We checked our Ring doorbell footage and no one had come into our apartment. I cleaned it up. I was feeling uneasy. I packed a diaper bag for my daughter so we could leave for the afternoon. Before we walked out the door, I glanced at our clock. The time was correct. It had been adjusted for the time change. I was startled. I checked my phone to be sure, and sure enough, the clock had been adjusted. I grabbed my daughter and her bag and left. Once we got safely to the car, I messaged my husband to ask if he had adjusted the clock. He had not. When we got home that evening, my husband thought I had been messing with him. I still can't explain what happened. My husband is not a practical joker, and this would have been a very weird practical joke to play. I always felt like it was a little glitch in the matrix. That or something more sinister, but my brain prefers the former. Case file number 1983, written by Grace Omega. Naked and Strange, a glimpse through the range. When this happened, about 2.5 years ago, I was sleeping in a room at the back of my house that faces the back of another row of houses. For some reason, the people in those houses often don't close their curtains at night, which can get awkward because I often felt like I was accidentally spying on people if they had their lights on. One evening, I was doing something in my room, tidying up or something, and I glanced out the window. 2 houses down, in one of the upstairs bedrooms, there was a naked girl standing right in front of the window, staring out. The bedroom light was on, even though there was still plenty of daylight, so this was hard to miss. I'm a guy in my early 30s, assuming she was just getting dressed and forgot to close the curtains, and not wanting this girl to think I was being creepy. I quickly looked away and went about whatever I was doing. A few minutes later, I happened to look out the window again, and she was still there, still just staring straight out of her bedroom window. This was weird enough that I stopped what I was doing and tried to figure out what the hell was going on. The girl started moving really slowly, sort of making these odd poses, like turning slightly from side to side or lifting one arm like she was looking at herself in a mirror. Except obviously there was no mirror, and it wasn't nearly dark enough to get a reflection in the window like you do sometimes at night. The sun had just begun to set, so it was actually still quite bright out. I just stood there for a while, trying to come up with some sort of explanation for what I was seeing, but the whole thing started to feel way too creepy on every level, at which point I noped out and closed my blinds. About 15 minutes later, I cautiously checked to see if the coast was clear, and the girl was gone. And this is where it gets even weirder. It took me a while to realize this, but there is no young girl living in that house. The couple who live there are elderly, and if it was a grandchild or something, then I'd never seen her there before or since. I also find it really odd that no one else saw her. I know they didn't because gossip gets around the street like wildfire. And this is the sort of thing that would have been talked about. Like I said, not the craziest story, but it was incredibly eerie. Still wonder who the hell that was and what she was doing. Case file number 1984, written by Silvertane, The Bentley That Never Was. I attended a funeral last week, attended by my uncles, aunties, and cousins. I haven't seen them for years, and some, decades. I saw my cousin, who is a director of a communication company. I haven't seen him for maybe a decade. Last time I saw him at a funeral, he owned a distinctive cream-colored Bentley with a red interior. I remember talking to him at length about it, and vividly remember 2 of my brothers being there for the conversation. The same 2 were also at this recent funeral. I asked him if he still owned this Bentley, and he looked confused, and said he has never owned one in his life, only Jaguars, which he was indeed driving on that day. I was confused but didn't push it. Later I asked my brothers, thinking my cousin frankly was lying. He's a bit of a Flash Harry type character. They also said that they have no idea what I'm talking about, despite the fact that I can recall us all talking around the bloody car, clear as day. It's a very distinctive car. I thought maybe it was a different person until I remembered my cousin gave me his business card. Buy the car. And also the other day I dug out the old card. I have it with all my other business cards. And they are identical. So what the hell's going on? I can't stop thinking of this as a parallel universe or what. Case file number 1985, written by Trying to Not Comment. Gates Mystery. Screw's Return History. A week ago, I was sweeping off the walkway at the side of my house after a stormy night. As I got to the gate, I noticed that the handle on the gate was missing one of the 2 screws that attach it to the wood. I checked the ground for the missing screw but couldn't find it. Upon closer inspection, it looked like a screw had never been installed at the top of the handle because there was no corresponding hole drilled into the gate. I just assumed that I must have forgotten to add that screw when I had replaced the gate handle a few months earlier. It was a bit annoying because the screws came with the handle as a kit. I had no idea where to find the screw or to get a matching replacement. A couple days later, I went back out to the gate to get a better look at the remaining screw so I could go find a replacement for the missing one. Here's a glitch. The handle was fully attached with 2 screws. The handle was attached exactly as I believe I had originally attached it. Nothing was missing. The screws on the handle were equally weathered and showed no sign of being tampered with. Case file number 1986, written by Iceland D 96. John who died, John who's still alive. So a little background. My mom grew up in a small town and is still extremely close with many of her childhood friends, one of whose changed name is Liz. My family lives in the capital city and the town she grew up in is about a 4 to 5 hour drive away. But my parents visit there multiple times a year, so keeping in contact is easy. Liz was married to a man not called John. John was a big, tall man and one of my favorite uncles growing up. At some point, they moved from the small town about 40 minutes away into the countryside and set up their farm and had a child. About 5 or 6 years ago, John very suddenly passed away, leaving Liz and everybody else devastated. John was home alone and was doing his morning farm tasks when he had a stroke whilst outside in the freezing snowy cold. This was very early in the morning, and neither his wife or daughter would be home for another 6 to 8 hours, so he lay there outside unconscious until his wife finally returned home to find him dead. This next part I remember very, very well. I was at home and was helping my mom make dinner when Liz called to tell her of her husband's passing, and when my mom hung up the phone, she burst into tears and broke the news to the rest of the family. We all took it pretty hard. I was 19 or 20 years old and did not live at home at the time, so admittedly the next few days were a bit of a blur as I was not home constantly. I did not attend the funeral myself, and I'm not sure exactly why, but I will say, in itself, that is not strange for my family and how we usually do things. My siblings and I did not even go to my father's brother's funeral last year. That and it probably being a few-day affair, I would not have been able to get enough time off to do so. I vaguely remember my parents making the trip, and for some reason, I remember my mom stressing over what she would wear to the funeral. Over the following years, I remember his death being brought up quite a few times, and Liz either alone or with her daughter, coming to the capital to visit us and other friends. She usually stayed in our guest bedroom. Every time, I thought about John and his death, and how devastated she and they must still be, as his death was 100% a matter of fact. Cut to last summer. I was living at home for a couple of months, when my mom texted me, "Liz is on her way to town, and they will be staying with us. I won't be home for a couple of hours. Can you prep the guest bedroom, just in case I won't make it in time?" To which I responded, "Yeah, of course," and proceeded to make the bed, and as I assumed it was her daughter, I also put the extra mattress for her on the other side of the room, as we usually did. 1 single duvet for the bed, 1 single duvet for the mattress, and 2 sets of guest towels on the dresser, again as we usually did for them. My mom comes home, and I go off to the store to get some things for the barbecue that my mother decided we were going to have for them. When I pull up in our driveway, I can see her car, so as I walk through the door I call out, "Hey Liz, hey, not, Tina." As I lay the bags down to take my shoes off I hear, "Oh wow, apparently I don't even deserve a hello," said in a joking voice, a voice familiar, but I still had no idea who it was, so I walked a little further in, to see a man standing with his arms open for embrace in the kitchen. Tina rushed to hug me, and Liz was in the bathroom. I'm standing there very, very confused by this man, and who he was when it kinda hit me. That's John, followed immediately by No, of course that's not John. This must be some relative or something that has come for a visit. So I hugged him and said something like, "Oh, of course you do. I just thought you would prefer the hug." And hugged this familiar stranger, planning to sneakily ask my mom to remind me who he was. Liz came out of the bathroom, gave me a hug, and walked right past the man, sat down next to my mom at the kitchen table. I motioned for my mom to help me with the alcohol I had left in the car. When outside, I whispered to her, "Who is that man in the kitchen again?" To which she looked at me like I was a crazy person and said, "What do you mean? That's John. He just lost a bit of weight." I realized my initial thought was correct, and that was in fact a skinnier John. I was at a loss for words, and my mom just stared at me, and my surely pale, looked like I've just seen a ghost face, and asked if everything was alright, and all I could say was, "John is dead." She laughed and asked, "What the hell are you talking about? Of course he's not dead. What do you mean?" I explained everything, and how I swear we have talked about his death multiple times since it happened. How it happened. The phone call from Liz when we were making dinner, and even when she had said they in the text. I assumed it was only Liz and Tina, and therefore made the guest bedroom, ready only for the two of them. My mom looked extremely confused, but told me what really happened. He did have a stroke and was lying unconscious outside, and neither Liz nor Tina would have been home for hours if Liz had not forgotten something at the house, and had to drive back to get it, arriving just minutes after John had fallen unconscious. She was able to call emergency services and get John into the car. He was a big man. It must have taken incredible strength, and drive towards the ambulance. This ultimately saved his life. He would not have survived if she had not forgotten her keys. He has apparently come over many times with Liz and Tina and stayed at our house in the last few years. Me and my mom brushed this off as a huge misunderstanding, which it probably is, but I still feel weird about the whole situation, as the fact that he died and the sorrow following his death still feels so true. What do you guys think? A glitch? Alternate reality? Me being crazy? Or just a misunderstanding? Case file number 1987, written by Saint Saturday. Going up, going down. No one makes a sound. Lo and behold, something pretty odd happened to me in an elevator, of all places. Anyway, as a disclaimer, I'm the type of person who'd rather ignore anything that seems out of the ordinary and go on about my life, and I try to be as rational as possible. I keep thinking about this situation. Maybe I interpreted the whole situation wrong, I don't know. I'll let you guys form your own opinion. Yesterday, I had to pick up a paper for an exam from the university where it's also hosted. I'm not a student there, so I'm not very familiar with the place, and the last time I went there was last year, for a similar exam. Anyway, this is just to give you a little more context. The story goes like this. The university is extremely crowded, since it's noon. I take the elevator to the 3rd floor, go pick up the paper from one of their offices, then go back to the elevators. I go into the elevator with these two girls. I stand right next to the buttons. This is my fault too, because I hesitated to press my floor, but I wasn't sure if the 1 button was for the ground floor or for the 1st floor. The two girls talked for a bit before pressing the 1 button, 1st floor, not ground floor as I figured out later, which was the P button, and going silent. Everything is normal so far. We get to the 1st floor. I step out a bit to check if it's floor I came from. Obviously not. I get back in. The girls, weirdly, don't get off at the floor they pressed, and don't say anything either about it. Okay, maybe they changed their minds, but didn't mention it to each other? Whatever. 3 or 2 people. I can't remember the exact number, but it was more than 1 person. Get in with us from the 1st floor. We'll call them the 2nd group for clarity, because it's about to get even more complicated. The 2nd group pressed the buttons for the 3rd floor and the 5th floor. Still normal. Now it gets even weirder though. I honestly really don't understand why I had no reaction or made no move to say anything. By the way, everyone was quiet. Nobody communicated anything to each other, which I really don't get, since everyone who got in the elevator was accompanied by at least one other person. We go back to the damn third floor. On that floor, the two girls get off, the floor that they were previously on with me. Again, maybe they both realized that they needed to get back to the third floor, but somehow didn't mention it to each other, and neither made an attempt to press the third floor button. The second group, the one who pressed the button for the third floor, doesn't get off at the third floor. Instead, another group of these 3 people with coffee cups steps in. And I'm not freaking with you. One of the people with the coffee cups calmly presses the button for the third floor. Finally, another person in the elevator pressed the button for the ground floor. Honestly, I was worried that the elevator would just stay stuck on the third floor. But then I felt it going down and was extremely relieved. We reached the ground floor and I stepped out. Funnily enough, I looked back to see if anyone else got off at the ground floor. Nope, not one, even though there was a person who pressed the ground floor button. I leave the university and focus on finding the bus station, forgetting about the whole thing. I get back home and start thinking about it more in depth. What the frick? Also, why the frick? It's not like anything supernatural or scary happened, besides the weirdly subdued frustration I was feeling because I was unable to leave this damn building already. It just made no sense. It wasn't as if there was one odd person who was acting weird. It wasn't even as if anyone signaled that they pressed the wrong button. Everyone involved in the situation, which, need I remind you, were like 7 to 8 people, behaved illogically, and I don't understand why. It was as if they were mimicking having a destination, when everyone was actually circling back to the third floor. It didn't help that it was silent. No one was communicating anything to anyone like, "Oh, I forgot my bag on the third floor," or anything of the sort. And I also felt this strange sense of calm, mixed with some uneasiness and a sensation I can't describe, as if I didn't belong in this situation or space. I honestly think it was 1, being pranked, or just people were playing some kind of game, or 2, I'm crazy and understand the whole situation in a profoundly wrong way, or 3, the students at this university are extremely indecisive and also don't know how an elevator works. I know I'm probably making a bigger deal out of it than I should. It was just an interesting situation. My life is very mundane in general. Case file number 1988, written by Peckerton Detective, The Wedding Band's Magic Hand. My husband had lost his wedding ring for a few weeks, but had recently located it in the drawer in the basement where he'd been staying at my mom's house. He was so happy to have found it, and proudly showed me it was back on his finger, where it belonged, around the 1st or 2nd of this month. On Monday, November 4th, he had a heart attack. It was a survivable heart attack, but he suffered some trauma with the EMTs after they left, and he ultimately died from their mistake. I didn't get anything back except his shoes and socks, and top denture plate. His clothes ring, $400 cash I wasn't aware he withdrew from the ATM that morning, and lower denture plate are gone. Well, today I went to clean out the old apartment 30 miles away, and that we hadn't been to in a month or a month and a half. In a box in our room, only I would open, lay his wedding ring. I'm so grateful to have it back. It weighed so heavy on my heart. Good glitch, or a good husband to bring it back. Oof, that's heavy. Case file number 1989, written by Outside Pain 4561, Victoria's Secret. This incident happened about 3 years ago. I work in healthcare as a patient care technician. Basically a CNA, but in a hospital instead of a nursing home. During this particular night shift, my responsibility was to sit with a confused patient to keep him safe. He had dementia, so he would try to get up, wander around, or pull out his IVs. My job was to make sure he didn't get up on his own, to prevent falls, and to keep him from pulling out any lines. This kind of sitter role is pretty common for confused patients in hospitals. The patient was in his 80s, and he was so confused he didn't even know his own name or where he was. Things were going smoothly. He fell asleep around 11 p.m., but then woke up around 1 a.m. and looked over at me. To get my attention, he said, "Hey, Victoria." that's not my name, but since he was confused, I didn't think much of it at first. I told him my actual name and asked if he needed anything, but he kept calling me Victoria 3 more times. Here's where it got strange. My parents almost named me Victoria. It came down to that or my real name. They ultimately chose my name because my dad wasn't a fan of Tory spelling. The names aren't even similar. I asked the nurse if this patient had any family members named Victoria, or had previously had a nurse by that name, but there was no connection. No family member, spouse, or prior caregiver with that name. Trying to shake off the odd feeling, I told myself it was probably just confusion. But a short while later, he started singing the theme song to the Beverly Hillbillies, and that's when I really got chills. When I was little, my parents used to recite that theme song as if it were a bedtime story when my siblings and I asked for a story. The whole situation gave me an eerie feeling, like this man somehow knew things about me, even though we had never met. There's no way he could have known any of my family. This was in my college town, far from where I grew up. I might be overthinking it, but years later I still think about this night and the unsettling feeling I had. Case file number 1990. Hey, my birth year. Written by, just call it a mystery. Dragons and dreamy fish. Until today, I always thought this experience was an instance of confabulation between a vivid dream and reality. However, my cousin said something which made me doubt this. This happened around 11 years ago. I was about 15 and experiencing vivid dreams almost every night. These were various and sometimes turned to nightmares, but one particular dream stood out. In this dream, a guy from my business class gave me a necklace as a gift. It was a pretty common design of an opal surrounded by a dragon. I can find something similar on Etsy today. However, at the time, it wasn't really something I'd seen before. For the purposes of additional context, I should state that I did not have a crush on this guy. We got along and were friends, but there was no particular reason I would be dreaming about him giving me a gift. Regardless, in the dream, we had some kind of argument in my garden, and I took the necklace off and I threw it down to the garden where it landed on the stones, somewhere near the decking. However, that morning when I woke up, I let the dogs out as I usually did, and since it was a nice day, I went outside with them. I stood near the decking and I saw the light hit something on the stones. Naturally, I picked it up, and it was the exact same necklace from the dream the previous night. I remember taking it back into the house and showing my mom, asking her if she had dropped it. She told me she had never seen it before. I started wearing it, and I kept it on for a couple days until it came time to wash my hair. I'd worn the necklace in the shower before, but I was concerned that the shampoo would damage the necklace, so I took it off and placed it down on my cabinet. It was not until the next morning I went to look for it and realized that I could not find it anywhere. I checked behind the drawers and under it. I searched my whole room but never found it. When I asked my mom about it, she had no idea what I was talking about. Couldn't recall me showing her a necklace I found in the garden. After a while I stopped thinking about it, but a few months later I ended up in a relationship with a new guy. Not the one who had given me the necklace in the dream, however he was friends with him. My boyfriend showed me a text from our classmate admitting that he had a crush on me, which reminded me about the missing necklace. The necklace never showed up and the whole thing became just kind of a strange memory. I figured maybe the vivid dream around this time had caused a memory distortion. That was until today. I was browsing Etsy looking for a necklace for my niece and asking my cousin for her opinion. We saw a similar looking necklace and I immediately thought back to the necklace which had gone missing. Then my cousin made a comment that it was similar to the one I used to wear and asked what happened to it. I had never told my cousin about the story before and I asked her what she remembered and she just said she can remember me wearing something similar. But then one day I'd moved on to a different necklace and she always believed I simply got bored of it. Case file number 1991, written by A Little Bit Morbid. Echoes of Jay on a warm spring day. This happened a few years ago, and whenever it's this time of year, I remember it because his birthday is coming up. My mom had an ex, I'll call him Jay for this, who she was with for a few years. He was like a stepdad to me. We didn't always get along, me being an angry teenager and him not being the easiest person. But in the time before he passed, sudden heart attack at age 49, our relationship got better, which made it much worse when he suddenly was gone. He died in 2013. Sometime after that, I can't remember how much time had passed, but it must have been about a year after, I was grocery shopping. The supermarket was nowhere near where Jay used to live or work. It was a sunny, warm day. I was done with shopping and had just returned my cart and was making my way across the parking lot, back to my car, when I saw a car of the same make, model, and color as his. Not too unusual. Then a guy dressed the same way Jay used to was walking up to it. Just saw him from behind at that moment. Black jeans, black t-shirt tucked in, leather belt, same haircut and color. Okay, I thought, not a weird way to dress, could be any guy. Haircut and color weren't rare as well. He opened the door of his car, turned around like he knew I was watching, smiled and waved at me, then got in. I could not move, I was shocked. I then hastily walked back to my car. Could not be him, it could not be. I had parked my car in reverse, so when I sat down in it, I could see other cars coming and going. I opened my window because I had to gather myself for a moment, and it was hot in the car. Then I saw his car leaving his spot. He had to pass my car, and so I got a closer look. He had a few feathers bound together with a leather strip hanging from his rear mirror, like Jay always had. His window was down, he wore sunglasses, same shape and color, just like Jay did. He looked exactly as I remembered him, and he was blasting one of Jay's favorite songs. He again smiled and waved at me, and then drove away, still smiling. I must have sat there for about half an hour. I was at his funeral. He was cremated. I held his urn. We cried and mourned him. My mom also went there even though they were not a couple anymore, but I had just seen him in broad daylight. I mean, the smiling and waving could have been because I was staring at him, and he was a random guy who felt flattered that a woman half his age was staring at him. But everything, every detail I saw, car was the same. It was an older car, the color not too common. Clothing and style were the same. The sunglasses, the feathers, the music, his mannerisms, the way he walked, waved, smiled, it felt unreal. Like I had witnessed something I should not have seen, like a secret. Also, him turning around when he was in his car, then looking at me like he knew me. Like he knew I was there. Case file number 1992, written by Herbert Wong. Wrong car, right punch. My friend in a crunch. A blue, beaten-down old Peugeot was idling in front of my entrance when I came out of my building to wait for my friend to pick me up. He drives a tiny blue, the exact same rare shade of blue, beater Peugeot, so this was obviously his car. I approached it, and I saw this really fat dude with a beard and glasses sitting in the driver's seat. He looked exactly like my friend, who was also fat. Not that fat, but I thought he might have put on a few pounds. Since last week, I don't know, but I thought maybe he had a rough day yesterday and looked bloated or something. So I rip open the door, get in, and amicably punch his fat, like I sometimes do, and the dude just stares at me, and I stare back at him. As I mentioned, he has the same beard, the same hair color, same age, same glasses. Everything was the same as my friend's, but something was off. Why wasn't he saying anything? Why didn't that familiar feeling kick in? My brain couldn't compute what the hell was going on for a hot minute, and we both just sat there and stared. And then I realized, this wasn't my friend. I had just sat down in a complete stranger's car and punched this complete stranger in the gut. I said something like, "Oh," and got out and walked away. I wonder what the dude thought was happening. It's like the map didn't load right or something when I exited my building onto the street. My actual friend arrived a couple minutes later. Case file number 1993, written by Lost Me Down the Spiral, physics-defying chair. Aldi's strange affair. One day I was at Aldi's. I was standing in line waiting to check out. In the lane to my left was a tall stack of chairs interlocked, maybe about 10. The kind with hard plastic seats on metal frames, like school chairs, but they were adult-sized. They were all stacked like puzzle pieces. The stack wasn't leaning or tilted at all. The stack was about 5 feet to my left. I was looking right at them when the top chair rose straight up about a foot, and then cartwheeled over onto the ground loudly. Just the one chair. I don't know if the other people in line were looking at the chairs when it happened. They of course heard it and reacted. I kept looking at their faces and mumbling, "Anyone else see that?" No one seemed to hear me. It was seriously shocking. The chair went up and then fell. It didn't fall over either, it cartwheeled. It flipped completely upside down in the air before it fell, and it fell with way more force than it would have if it had just fallen over the side of the stack like normal. I'll never understand how that happened. I know it's not that big of a deal probably, but it didn't move within the laws of physics. It really scared me. The legs went down over the chair under it, the way it was stacked, and held it in place. It shouldn't have been able to move unless the whole stack fell together. If you had walked up to the stack of chairs and pulled on it, in any direction, it would have pulled the chair under it also, and so on, causing the whole stack to fall over. There was no way to pull one chair off like that. Case file number 1994, written by Lehman117. Fields Aglow, The Nighttime Show. I'll never forget that night. It's etched into my memory as one of the most surreal experiences of my life. It was about 10 years ago. A friend and I were driving through the vast empty stretches of Saskatchewan, making our way from Winnipeg to Vancouver. It was around 11:30, maybe midnight, and the darkness was absolute. The stars barely cut through the sky, and our headlights seemed to disappear into the blackness ahead. It was as ordinary as a midnight drive could be, with nothing but the hum of the road and kilometers of fields on either side. But then, in a split second, everything changed. Out of nowhere, the night was replaced by the brightness of broad daylight. Not a distant glow or flash, but full, high noon daylight. The sky turned blue, and we could see the fields stretching for kilometers in every direction, clear as if it were the middle of the day. It was as if the universe had flipped a switch, casting sunlight over the land for a few seconds, then snatching it back. My friend and I were stunned, almost frozen, glancing at each other to confirm we were both witnessing this impossible phenomenon. The whole thing lasted maybe about 5 seconds before the darkness closed in around us again. Over the next few days, we searched every corner of the internet, desperate for an explanation, maybe a massive explosion or some unknown atmospheric event. But there was nothing. No reports, no clues, no theories. To this day, my friend and I still talk about it, wondering what in the world we saw that night. It remains one of the most mysterious, unexplainable events of my life. Like a forgotten memory of a dream that no one else could ever believe. Case file number 1995, written by Imba, that user names, 2020. Hormones fly, necklace goes bye-bye. When I was very pregnant and very irritable, I was packing for a trip. My incontinent senior dog had a habit of wriggling out of her diaper in the most inconspicuous corners of the house. I swear she did it on purpose, for a few moments of freedom. However, she leaked like a dripping faucet. So when I saw her bare bottom prancing in front of me while I was putting my accessories bag together, I lost my crap. Like full-blown raging pregnancy hormones, seeing stars, lost it. And the only way to handle it, clearly, was to throw something. I threw my favorite necklace towards a corner of the wall. I watched it make contact against the drywall, but then it just disappeared, just gone. I searched the entire bedroom, thinking that maybe it just bounced and landed somewhere crazy, like on top of the ceiling fan blade. I even checked the trim above the closet door and baseboards to see if it fell through a gap. In my desperation, I even prayed to Saint Anthony, like my grandma taught me. Tony, Tony, look around. Something's lost and can't be found. Please help me find my mother frickin' necklace. However, I had to catch a flight, so I took the L. Told myself I deserved it because I was a complete and utter lunatic. Years later, I was cleaning out my purses and found the necklace in the inner pocket of a purse. I had not used this purse in years, and it was a winter dark leather bag that I wouldn't have packed for a summer trip. My husband wasn't home at the time I was packing, and he wouldn't have touched it or put it in the purse. The purse was tucked away at the back of the closet on the top shelf for years. I know it was a hormonal raging mess, but I literally saw the necklace hit the wall and never come down, only for it to show up again later in the inner pocket of an otherwise empty purse? Case file number 1996, written by Redhead SB. Rural Ride with a Blue Lights Guide. About 4 months ago, my mom had knee replacement surgery and they sent her home the next day. After 3 days, her leg was kinda red and significantly more swollen. She also had a fever, so we decided to go back to the hospital. This was around 10 p.m. and it was dark. I was driving, Mom was in the passenger seat, my 12-year-old daughter was in the back middle seat. We live in a very rural area, and after about 10 miles, we hadn't met one single other vehicle. It's that far out there. Along this stretch of highway, there are a few really tight curves that have a 30-mile-per-hour reduced speed limit sign. No flashing lights or anything else, just a yellow metal sign. There's a creek on one side and a steep cliff on the other, so no shoulder, no driveways, nowhere for another car to be besides on the road as we were. After the first curve, all of a sudden, we see a bright blue light flash through the car. I saw it on the trees in front of me and behind me when I looked in the door mirror. Then it was gone. Like cop lights, but without any red or headlights behind us. Just for 1 second. No sound, no other cars, in front or behind us. And we're only going 30 miles per hour. All 3 of us saw it. The exact same thing. It really freaked me out because I'm a very logical person, rational. And I can say this is the only experience I've had my whole life that I can't explain. Also, there are 2 wooden crosses beside the road where a tractor trailer crashed, and 2 people died in that spot. I remember that accident because it tore up the highway where the semi jackknifed. That section had to be repaved. I don't believe in ghosts or aliens or anything like that, and if my mom and daughter hadn't seen this too, I would have convinced myself I was seeing things and probably never even mentioned it to anyone. So my theory is, we drove through a glitch in the Matrix and saw the emergency lights from that accident years ago. As crazy as that seems, it makes as much sense as anything else I can think of. Case file number 1997, written by Man from the Other Side. 2 moons, 1 night, totally white. To start with, I'd like to tell you about one of my own experiences with the uncanny. Because despite being a somewhat skeptical resident of the simulation, I know I can't explain everything. And this was the most unexplainable occurrence I've ever witnessed with my own 2 eyes. It was the summer of 2016, one weekend in August. It was the peak of the Perseid meteor shower, and, as was tradition for me and my dad, we had decided to drive out to a hill in the Chilterns, away from the hellish glow of our light-polluted town, to get the best view we could. A perfect stargazing spot we'd been to several times before. My dad is an avid stargazer, and we'd taken his telescope out there before and seen Saturn and Jupiter. But this was the first time we'd gone there for the meteor shower, having previously only viewed it from our garden. Which wasn't a bad view. The garden was surrounded by trees that blocked out a lot of the glow of the streetlights, but we were sure that out there in the middle of the countryside, we'd see a truly spectacular display. We were accompanied by my partner and my cousin, both who'd never been out there before. The night wasn't looking to be as great as we were expecting. The sky was clouding over rapidly as we drove out to the hill. My dad was still optimistic, and reminded me of the 1999 solar eclipse we'd seen from a beach in Cornwall when I was about 8. The sky had been just as overcast and miserable, leading to him cursing the heavens for ruining our view. But as the eclipse had neared, miraculously, a hole had opened up in the clouds, revealing the sun glaring through. That had itself been a very spooky experience, but nothing that couldn't be put down to coincidence. However, what was to come that evening still sends chills down my spine when I remember it. We arrived at the hill, parked up, and began to trek up to the summit. It wasn't a long climb, but the hill was steep and it certainly gave the 4 of us a mild workout. We laid out a couple of blankets and settled down to, hopefully, enjoy the show. But as the sky began to darken, it seemed clear that the weather was not going to play ball. We were obviously disappointed, and my dad's optimism began to fade. But my partner and cousin said we should wait a little longer to see what happened. So we continued to watch the clouds roll over, and on the horizon, we saw a clearing begin to form. It was sunset, and the last rays of day illuminated the underside of the cloud cover, which was a beautiful sight that almost made the trip out there worth it in of itself. The sky ablaze like it was on fire, even though overhead, the cloud was as thick as ever. Once the sun had vanished, we also noticed the moon rising on the opposite horizon. A bright silver orb dotted with craters. It was seemingly much larger than usual. I stared at the object for a moment before tapping my dad on the shoulder and pointing his gaze to it. "I didn't think the moon was supposed to be full tonight," I said. I'd checked the moon phase for that evening to see if it would be too bright to see the meteor shower, and it was supposed to be only a half moon. My dad shook his head in confusion. No, it definitely wasn't supposed to be full. But there it was, the moon plain as day rising over the hills in the distance. I grabbed the attention of my partner and my cousin and directed their attention to it as well. All 4 of us witnessed this enormous, super large full moon making its way towards a cloud cover overhead. There was no mistaking it. Then things took an even stranger turn when my dad called to me and told me to look straight up. Overhead, a hole had begun to open up in the clouds, just like it had happened during the eclipse all those years ago. And there, as to be expected, was the half moon, the real moon. The 4 of us shared confused glances as we looked from the moon above to the one on the horizon, still hanging there. As we all stood there in silence, mouths agape, we watched the full moon in the distance begin to fade, from white to orange to nothing. The real moon above soon vanished back behind the clouds, and we sat for a while, trying to rationalize what we'd all seen. Perhaps a giant spotlight, we thought, or who knows? Really, we could think of nothing that would have been bright enough or large enough for us to mistake it as the full moon. And the object had appeared in the clear part of the sky, not projected onto the clouds as one of us suggested. We soon packed up our things and headed for home, with no hope of seeing the meteors, and all of us bearing the sense of quiet unease after what we'd seen. I spent the next few days researching aerial phenomena, to try and find anything that might have explained what had happened, but to this day I don't know what could have caused this particular vision we'd all shared. To add to the strangeness in the years since, me and my dad have periodically reminded each other of this event, and we both remember it vividly and share this sense of discomfort over it, like we had seen something we shouldn't have. But, oddly, my partner and my cousin have since said they have no memory of this event. They remember our trip to the hill, but nothing about the second moon. If it had only been me who'd witnessed it, I'd have waved it away as some kind of hallucination, which would have been fine by me. But the fact that my dad remembers it, honestly, makes it even more unnerving. I don't think I'll ever forget the night I saw the phantom moon. Case file number 1998, written by Lana Bandicoot. Mirror me at the Coffee Jubilee. I work a pretty boring 9-to-5 job in a mid-size office building. Every day, I go to the same coffee shop across the street around 2 p.m. for my caffeine fix. I'm such a regular that the barista, Sam, automatically starts making my order when he sees me in line. On this particular day, I left my office a little later than usual, around 2:15. When I reached the door to the lobby, I realized I'd left my keycard on my desk on the other side of the building. But that was no problem. The secretary, Sarah, signed me out on paper. This happens all the time. As I crossed the street and approached the coffee shop, I saw myself, me, wearing the same clothes, same bag, same everything, standing at the counter inside, chatting with Sam. I froze. My heart was racing, but my brain was like, no, you're imagining this. Maybe it's someone who just looks like you. But then this other me turned slightly, and I got a perfect look at their face. It was my face. Down to the tiny birthmark I have under one eye. I panicked. I turned around and walked back across the street without going inside. My hands were shaking. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that I must have been overtired or something. But here's the thing. When I got back to my desk and looked inside my bag, the coffee cup was there. The exact same coffee I was planning to order, with my name written on it in Sam's handwriting. I never went into the shop. I never bought the coffee. But there it was, hot and fresh, like I had just picked it up. I looked up at the clock and the time was still 2:15. The usual time I'd get back after heading over and grabbing my coffee. But I'd definitely been outside for longer than a minute. It was like my timeline diverged. One version of me had split away at 2 p.m. and gone to grab the coffee, while I had stayed behind. And then when returning to the building, our timelines had merged again. Even scarier than this, though, which one had I been at the time? Was I the original me, or was I some kind of duplicate for that time? I spent the rest of my workday just feeling very off about the whole thing. I didn't even drink the coffee. It got me to wondering about the stories of shapeshifters or doppelgangers I'd heard in the past. And I had to wonder if this is where some of those came from. Maybe two timelines split or converge, and you can be at two places at once for a short time. I wonder how many times this sort of thing happens without you noticing. I haven't told anyone at work because, let's be real, they'd think I'm insane. But the secretary at the office does remember me heading out, and she remembers me having forgotten my keycard. But she says it happened at 2, and it even says so in the log where she signed me out. I've gone back to the coffee shop since, and everything's been normal. Though, weirdly enough, Sam didn't remember me coming. The next day, when I went to grab my coffee, he asked if I'd been off sick the day before. So if he never gave me coffee that day, where did the coffee in my bag come from? Some parallel universe that collided with this one for a split second? How can he and Sarah remember things so differently? Which one of these is even real? I don't know, but I still have the cup. I wrote it in red marker, "This came from nowhere." It's in my kitchen cupboard now. I keep checking on it just to remind myself that I didn't imagine the whole thing. What the hell happened? Strange that other people's memories can be affected or altered by these events. Case file number 1999, written by Gold Links 8333. The Jogger's Jinx, coins in a blink. I am a runner, and I occasionally bonk while running, meaning I run out of sugar in my blood and glycogen in my liver and muscles, and feel very hungry and can't run anymore. I take energy gels with me for runs longer than 15 kilometers, but the problem is it sometimes happens during shorter runs. So about 6 months ago, I had this idea that I would tape two $2 coins, I'm in Australia, to my spare key that I carry with me when running. The other key has my car keys, work keys, etc., and is too bulky to run with. This morning, I had to use the money for the first time. I somehow felt hungry only 8 kilometers into my run, and had to buy a banana for $1 from the local petrol station, gas station if you're in the US, nearby. The attendant told me what a great idea it was to carry some money this way while running. I came home and was busy all day, But this afternoon I wanted to take the dog out for a quick walk. I then thought I'd retape the two $2 coins back onto the key before I left, and proceeded to do so before taking the dog for a walk. The tape dispenser was on its last bit of tape, but there was enough to get 2 or 3 turns around the key, so it was secure. When I returned just 15 minutes later, I opened the door with the spare key, and had a strange feeling. The 2 coins securely taped onto the spare key were gone. This completely dumbfounded me. I've lost stuff before and blamed a glitch in the Matrix, before it turned up where I left it and forgot about it. But here I'm talking about taping 2 coins onto my spare key, leaving the house, returning home in 15 minutes, and finding them gone. They would not have slipped off or anything. I taped them the same way last time, and had to actually ask to borrow scissors to cut the tape and free the coins when I was buying the banana. It lasted through running an estimated 500 kilometers, but after a 1 kilometer walk, the coins were gone? Normally I'd lose my crap over this, but I find myself strangely calm, and acknowledging there's more to this world than just the physical, visible, and palpable dimension. Case file number 2000. Wow, it's a lot. Written by I Love Tacos 599. 3 or 3:30. This mystery is dirty. Back when I was working at a grocery store when I was 18 years old, I would take pictures of the work schedule for the week. Usually I would remember what time my next shift started, but had the picture as a just in case sort of thing. That day, I knew I started at 3:30 p.m., being the bit of a paranoid person I am. I went to check my phone to look at the picture to confirm. It said 3 p.m. I could not believe my eyes. I felt a bit crazy, and as if I had a memory problem that made me anxious. I had my iPhone screen brightness up all the way and zoomed in, and it clearly showed 3 p.m. I showed my mother the picture, and she confirmed it was 3 p.m. Brand new iPhone at the time, no cracked screen or screen protector, and a clear picture taken in a well-lit room. I drove to work and got there at 3, and I went to look at the schedule, and behold, it said 3:30 p.m. I could not believe my eyes. I go look at the phone again, and it said 3:30 p.m. like I originally remembered. I asked a coworker what it showed on my phone, the same exact picture I showed my mother, and he said 3:30. When I went home, I showed my mom the picture again, and she said she sees 3:30. I told her what happened, and I said, "Remember I showed you this picture, and you said it says 3? She does remember seeing 3, and just brushed it off, saying it was weird. To this day, it still bugs me that nothing like that ever happened again." Case file number 2001. Written by A Space Odyssey. Just kidding. Written by Misty W3 Wednesday, City Jeans, and Curious Queens. I, female 27, recently moved to a new medium-large size city, and for the past few weeks, something weird has been happening. There's this one stranger, someone I don't know, have never met, who I keep seeing everywhere. We cross paths in places where there's no logical reason for us to run into each other. Different parts of the city, at different times of day. She's just everywhere. I'll be riding the tram and notice her walking down the street. I'll be waiting for a bus and notice her in a coffee shop. People tend to see other people around a city, I get it. But there's no one else I can think of that I've seen multiple times in this way, and it just feels off. I didn't really clock it as strange until she started carrying the same exact bag as me. It's a Carhartt canvas tote bag. Same color, same style. It's just odd. We've never made eye contact. She's around my age, but we don't look alike. She's just there, always around, never noticing me. I am really interested in the spiritual significance of this. It doesn't feel evil or good, so I'm sort of lost. Case file number 2002, written by Sharp Case 8272, Jibber Jabber, and Paranormal Clamber. I was hanging out with my 2 younger brothers one cloudy summer day in our shared room. We were all young kids. I was 8, and my brothers were 6 and 4. Our father, being a carpenter, we had this set of beds which could either stack up into a triple bunk bed, or spread out along the floor as 3 small single beds. This afternoon, the beds were spread out in the latter fashion. The middle brother was sitting in the middle of his bed, leafing through some kind of picture book. I'm not certain what I was doing at the time. Maybe walking around the room with an action figure, pretending it was flying or something. All I know is that I was on my feet. My youngest brother was sitting cross-legged on the floor, busying himself with a random assortment of small toys and quietly mumbling to himself. Steadily, his mumbling started getting louder, and he eventually stopped playing with his toys altogether. Instead, he was sitting completely still, staring into space beyond the toys he was playing with, and continuing to babble gibberish. He, like myself and our other siblings, and probably every child on Earth, was prone to making sounds every now and then. It was nothing new. But there was something off about what I was hearing. None of the sounds were what I was used to hearing. Not the typical cute bullcrap nonsense words of a 4-year-old just having fun. They all seemed so random and harsh and deliberate, and he was just sitting there, staring ahead with a blank expression. Fully alarmed and becoming more scared by the second, I call his name and try to snap him out of it. He immediately fixes his 1,000-yard stare on me and slowly stands up, all the while continuing to babble these strange nonsense words. I looked over to my other brother, who was intermittently looking back and forth between him and me. Not bothering to say anything, but obviously puzzled. Then, my youngest brother took 2 or 3 slow steps towards me, while looking past me and speaking in tongues. The only thing I thought to do was to say to him, "Shut up! That might mean something in another language." Immediately after those words left my mouth, I shot my attention to my other brother, and watched the foot of the bed he was sitting on rise up a couple of feet. As he sensed that he was inexplicably lifting at a tilt, he screamed and the bed dropped back into place. Our youngest brother went back to playing on the floor, this time in silence. My other brother and I were left staring at each other. Throughout the years, we checked back with each other just to make sure it actually happened. None of us buy into religion, superstitions, ghosts, or anything of the ilk, but this instance is something we truly cannot explain. Case file number 2003, written by Kansas Spartan 762, Stars and Scares in the Midwest Airs. Being in the Midwest, you will inevitably see some crap in the night sky that you cannot explain. I've seen solid lights that flew normal for a few ways, then stop and fly straight up at speeds no current aircraft are capable in that amount of time, with no turning arc, just a 90-degree vertical flight. I've seen dark shapes just hanging in the air above fields, no flight lights or anything, just a dark shape, no noise. You look back and it's gone. One that's not UFO related was when I was living with my parents, who live on the outskirts of town. They have a couple acres in the country. I swear to God I hear some sort of female voice chanting, coming off the back deck at night. My room is next to the back door. Well, I ain't about to play with no damn black magic witch crap, so I grab my .22 rifle and spotlight and look out on the back deck. Didn't see a person, just a feral cat in a stare down with my sister's cat. Since there was a lot of feral cats and dogs coming up, rabies was on my mind. I wasn't going to let our cat get tore up. I boinked the feral cat in the head, instantly gone. Startled our cat a bit. I go to let our cat in the house so I can take the feral cat out to the back property line so the coyotes can get a midnight snack. I close the door and I swear I heard a shrill woman's voice on my shoulder whisper, "That was my cat." I freaked the frick out, whipped around, heart freaking pounding literally hard enough it was moving my shirt with the beating. But nothing was there. The night was still and quiet. Not normal for any rural area. Needless to say, I woke my dad up. We got our ARs out and walked the house and buildings. Nothing. I went to get the cat, but it was gone. Blood was still there, but no body. I know it was expired because I always put 2 additional rounds directly into the head of any animal to ensure it's gone. I did so with this cat. Coyotes and birds of prey don't come up on our decks, and they would have been scared off by the shots. I still have no idea what the frick happened that night. But afterwards, I waited till morning to deal with feral animals. Case file number 2004, written by Nameless Cabbage. Massive Shade and the Fear Parade. About 8 years ago, I was staying at my friend's house with my girlfriend. I came home after work, approximately 3 a.m. I lay down and she was still awake. So we began talking, and she started crying. It was the anniversary of her grandfather's death. I wrapped my arm around her and closed my eyes, but I couldn't get comfortable. I stirred and kept sitting up. Something was wrong. I looked through the door, across the hall, and into my friend's brother's room. I noticed he had a 4-foot-tall white fan. It was all I could see in the relatively dark house. But there was something else. Something in front of the fan in the doorway. I couldn't put my finger on it as I didn't see anything, rather, I felt it. Suddenly, my girlfriend sits up and says, "What's wrong, babe? Oh my God!" All the hairs on my body stood up as she confirmed my suspicion. That's when I saw it. A figure, massive, taller and wider than the doorframe. I couldn't see it with my eyes, but I guess you could call it the sixth sense or whatever. It was massive and it hated me. Hate. I was shaking. I've never been so scared in my life. I got out of bed. My body weighed a literal ton. It took tremendous strength to move. Shaking, I finally grabbed the light switch and turned it on. We both grabbed our stuff and hightailed it out of there. I later told my friend about it, who was dead asleep at the time, and he shrugged it off. About a week later, he and his brother started stealing our stuff, and we left for good. Case file number 2005, written by Puerto Quebolas. Uncle's Rest, Aunt's Unsettling Quest. Around 2012, one of my uncles died from diabetes. He lived with my family at home. The same night, I went to sleep and I had the weirdest dream I've ever had. In that dream, I woke up, opened the bedroom door, and saw my uncle's coffin in the middle of the living room, and my family waiting for the funerary to go to the graveyard. Besides the coffin, there was an aunt of mine that died when I was really young, and I remember seeing her just once before her death. My aunt looked at me and said, "I bet you don't remember me, Puerto Quebolas, but I'm your aunt and died when you were really young. I have something to show you." Against all my superstitions, I don't know if it's just my family, but there's a superstition that accepting an invitation from a dead relative means you'll die in your dream. I decided to grab my aunt's hand and get out of the house to get immediately transported to the graveyard, where we were supposed to bury my uncle. My aunt guided me around the graveyard and pointed at a mausoleum. "That's where my parents and I are buried." And then we kept walking. She stopped again at an empty grave and said, "This is where your uncle will be. Don't worry, he's at peace. You need to wake up now, and don't forget to pay us a visit." I woke up, and there it was, the same coffin with the same flowers in the same position. When we got to the graveyard, we followed the exact route my aunt and I took in my dream. We got to the same empty grave. Before leaving, I bought a bouquet from my aunt's mausoleum and left. After telling that dream to my mom, she got serious and said that my aunt was an eerie person with a penetrating gaze, and that everyone in the family suspected she was a witch or something else. Case file number 2006, written by Adeline Cracks. Virus Stroll turns into a quantum roll. In November 2019, before anyone knew about the virus in the UK, both me and my fiancé had it. We didn't know what it was until months later though. It hit my fiancé worse than me, and all she wanted to do was eat pastry. I was actually able to get out of bed, so while I still felt like death, I felt like a walk to the store was still doable for me, especially as I could get the bus home. The walk from the house to the store would take 35 minutes on a good day. I'm chronically ill with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. I promise these small details are important. The walk to the store took me a little longer, as I had to keep stalking to hack up a lung and catch my breath. I acquired the pastries and some sore throat medication before making my way to the bus station, which was beside the store, and finding the buses weren't running properly because so many drivers were off sick due to whatever this virus was going around. We didn't know anything about this novel virus until around February 2020, so I text my fiance right as I start walking from the bus station that I'm on my way, but walking, so I'll be back when I'm back. She replied almost immediately with an okay, and to take my time. I put in my headphones and started my music, which I remember distinctly was a 10-minute song, and began walking. I remember reaching the edge of the store building and turning a corner. And then I remember walking up the garden path and opening the front door to the house. My fiancée had come downstairs to get a drink and was extremely confused as she saw me. She told me to check the time on the message I had sent. The message I had sent to her to say I was on my way home from the bus station had been sent 6 minutes previous. There is physically no way I could have made it home, an easy 3-kilometer walk. We play Pokemon Go, so we knew roughly the distance, in 6 minutes. Even if I ran, there was no way it could have happened. Even Usain Bolt couldn't have done it. I was also still only halfway through the song that was playing when I set off. I wasn't particularly out of breath. I didn't have a coughing fit upon arrival home, and that walk back always brought me out in a sweat, but I wasn't sweating. The only explanation I can come up with is that I teleported somehow. Case file number 2007, written by ACX Drat. Scared Twins and Tattooed Sins. I, female 21, live in a town of about 50,000 people. Over the last year, I've had people come up to me at work and ask if I just got a new job. Confused, I always say no. A few months ago, my mom called me and asked if I'm in my local pet store where my stepdad is shopping. And I say, no. And my mom sends me a picture of who I even thought was me. I looked at the picture and was wondering if I've lost a bit of weight. I looked good, and then asked her where that picture was from, and she told me my stepdad just took it while shopping. Apparently he thought it was me and walked up to her and started talking to her, only to realize it wasn't me. Here's where it gets weird. I'm covered in deep scars, and the girl in the photo had the same scars as me. I also have a snake tattoo on my right arm. So did she. Same style and everything. She also had the same exact glasses that I wear daily. She was even wearing an outfit I've worn before. Now I have this picture of this woman who lives in my town who looks scarily like me. I want to meet her. I started asking people what her name is and explaining that I have a doppelganger. Her name sounds like Carrie, but isn't. I can't remember what the woman who came into work a few weeks ago said her name was. I don't know if I'm losing my mind, but there's too many coincidences here. I'm a micro-celebrity on TikTok. Do I have a stalker who's obsessed with me and wants to be me? Or maybe an old friend who follows my moves? I sound like I'm going crazy, but even I thought this woman was me. It's been weighing on my mind for months. Case file number 2008, written by What Amy Evans. From the floor to the top with Daniel's help. I have a sister 6 years younger than me, and when she was 3 to 4, she had an imaginary friend who did the typical things you know. Playing together, ask for a plate to be on set at the table, so Daniel could eat with us, buckle him up in the car because he's coming, and all that. We used to have bunk beds back then, and she got really good at climbing the steps alone. So, when my mom was in the kitchen, cooking or cleaning, she would take the stepladder off and lock it in a closet. But sometimes I would go looking for my sister or my mom would, and she would be on the top bunk, playing with all her toys. We would ask her how she got up there without the steps, and she shrugged and say, "Daniel helped me get up here." You think she was big enough to do it herself, but no, she wasn't. And there were no extra bars to help her climb. So we would ask her to show us how she got up, and she always turned to ask Daniel to show us, and she'd just tell us he didn't want us to know. It was a little creepy. Other things she used to do with Daniel was to get on the kitchen countertops next to the stove. My mom would be cooking, and she could see my sister playing in the living room, so she turned around to get a pot or something from the fridge, or whatever, and when she turned back around, there my sister was on the countertop, looking into the pots trying to help with dinner. No cabinet doors open or any noise, she just appeared there. And again, when my mom asked her how, she said Daniel helped her up, because my mom needed help in the kitchen. It was bizarre. She stopped seeing him after my parents did her christening. Who knows if she had an overactive imagination and was great at climbing, or if Daniel was actually always there to help her. But my sister says now, as an adult, that she actually remembers a little boy named Daniel coming by, that he would play with her. She even describes him as having white complexion with blue eyes, and he was always wearing blue jean overalls with a white shirt. Case file number 2009, written by Vosey4492. Pregnant Waddle, Potty Puddle. My nephew, by marriage, was approximately 10 years old. He had a little league baseball game one day. My husband's brother and sister-in-law, my nephew's parents, were unable to drive him. They had other stuff to do. I don't remember what the stuff was. I drove him to and from the game. I was about 7 months pregnant with my daughter at the time. My daughter is 5 now, so that tells you how long ago this was. Before the game, my nephew rubbed my tummy for good luck. I asked him to do that because he has a very gentle touch, and we are a very affectionate family. During the game, I took pictures of my handsome little fella with the plan to post them to Facebook and tag my husband's brother and sister-in-law. I was familiar with that area. It was right near the place where I went to middle school. Sometimes block parties are held around that area. My husband and I often go to these block parties. There was a special section for disabled people to sit. This area had particularly comfortable seating. The seats had backs, so you won't be all hunched over and uncomfortable like you would be if you were in the bleachers. Also, it was close to the bathroom. Luckily for me, pregnancy counted as a condition that allowed you to sit in that area. I did not see much of the game because I had to get up to pee like 8 times during the game. However, the parts that I did see made for a really great Facebook post. There was a building that you could enter with a bathroom. I had already entered that building several times to relieve myself. This one time, I entered that building and all of the stalls in the ladies' rooms were occupied. Therefore, I decided to use one of the porta potties. There were 2 porta potties, one about 10 feet from the bleachers and one next to the track about 100 yards from the baseball field. The temperature that day was in the low to mid 60s Fahrenheit, and it was slightly humid. That would be comfortable weather in which to be outside if I weren't pregnant. However, when I'm carrying around a big belly and I have rashes on my thighs, I do not want to make the trip to the potty near the track. As I was walking to the potty near the bleachers, my baby bumped out in front of me. I pressed my thighs together to keep from wetting my pants, crossed my fingers, and whispered to myself, "Please don't be occupied." When I got to the potty and opened it to see that it was empty, I breathed a sigh of relief. I entered that porta potty, closed and locked the door, unbuttoned and pulled down my maternity pants, sat on the toilet, and peed. At one point, my phone buzzes, so I reach into my purse to grab it. I brought my purse with me because I do not trust anyone. I realize I'm receiving a phone call from a friend. I answer the phone, and my friend and I talk for about 15 minutes, then we hang up. I wipe myself, stand up, use hand sanitizer, apply some ointment to my burning thighs, and zip up my pants, in that order. That is when I realize that there should be way more noise, considering how close the potty is to the bleachers. It is weird how long it has been without anyone knocking on the door. Something is off. I exit the porta potty. I now realize that I'm at the track, and I just stepped out of that other porta potty, not the one I stepped into. Not only am I confused and weirded out, I am dreading the trip back to the baseball area. I head back to the baseball field. It looks like the game just ended. My nephew is standing outside the building with the indoor bathroom. Out of breath from waddling over there, I call his name and wave him down. I asked him what he was doing there. He said that he assumed I was in the bathroom and he was waiting for me. He then says to me, "Where were you?" I informed him that all the stalls in the ladies' room were occupied. Since I did not feel like explaining this glitch in the Matrix phenomenon that just happened to me, I told him that I went to the other porta potty, since one by the bleachers was also occupied. I then drove my nephew home. Case file number 2010, written by Caddy Cruel. Déjà vu in the rear view. Something strange happened to me yesterday. I was on my way to a forest parking lot to go for a walk with my kids. My brother-in-law was planning to meet us there with his children. On the way, I saw him driving towards me and turning left, heading in the direction of the forest parking lot. I was about 100 meters away. I noticed he was driving his wife's car, which he occasionally uses when she's away for work. But one thing that struck me as odd, he didn't look at me, not even a quick glance in my direction. This was strange because I drive a very distinctive car. He should have recognized me. I could clearly see his face, focused straight ahead. I turned onto the same street he had taken and saw him in front of me for a short while before he sped up and I lost sight of him. When I arrived at the parking lot, I was surprised that he wasn't there yet. About 2 minutes later, he pulled into the parking lot, but in his car. He got out and was confused by the puzzled look on my face. I told him I had just seen him in his wife's car less than 5 minutes earlier, but he insisted it wasn't him and that his wife's car was parked in the garage. Obviously, I must have seen a similar car, and my brain filled in the blanks. It couldn't have been him, but I was so sure I recognized him. I didn't even bother to check the license plate because I was so convinced it was him. Case file number 2011. Written by Only Kitten. From Missing to Sitting. A mystery that's fitting. My girlfriend and I were going to Mexico for a girls' trip and we're both packing. I had laid out the clothes I was taking and folded them on the end of my bed, and I wanted to take a long matching set of earrings and a necklace. I looked up and down for the necklace, everywhere. I even called my girlfriend to look for it at her place. Since she lived down the block from me, we spent a lot of time together there. So then she comes over and helps me look at my house. Neither of us can find this necklace. But we have errands to run before our flight leaves the next day. So we hop in her car and do them together. We come back to my house and proceed to go upstairs to my bedroom and drop off the things I had gotten for the trip, when I notice there is a necklace on top of my neatly folded clothes. My friend and I had full-body goosebumps, and both of us looked at each other and knew exactly what had happened. Somehow, that necklace got teleported. It sounds crazy, but there it was, and the only explanation either of us have is that someone or something put that necklace there. My mother and father had recently passed away about 2 years prior. We both think it was either my mom or another type of energy that brought that necklace back from wherever it was and put it in plain sight on my folded clothes for the trip. The rest of the few pieces of jewelry I was planning on bringing on that trip were already packed in a very small jewelry bag. To this day, I cannot explain how or who brought that necklace back. All while me and my friend were out running a few errands for our trip the next day. Since that happened, I've been able to find all kinds of lost objects by just asking the universe, or sometimes Saint Anthony, finder of lost objects if you're Catholic. And almost 100% of the time, the object is found within hours. Many times it'll just appear somewhere, or I'll stumble upon it. But nothing has ever happened like the necklace. That was by far the most eerie and unexplainable thing I've ever encountered. That my girlfriend was an actual witness made it even more eerie. Had it only been me, I'd never feel able to tell the story, and know without a doubt it was some sort of spirit intervention. Case file number 2012, The Anomaly of the Midnight Flash. I went to bed around 11:30 p.m. Before bed, I always read. I have a warm yellow, low-light lamp beside my bed that's directed down towards my book. I was reading a non-fiction history book until midnight. Red Horizons, just to rule out that I wasn't making my imagination go wild by something I read. I put my book along with my phone, camera facing down, on top of the nightstand next to me, and turned out the light. My bedroom walls are painted a deep dark purple, and my furniture is black. I have a thick blackout curtain over the single window in my bedroom, which faces towards a neighbor's house in a quiet, small gated community. When I turn the light out, my bedroom is pitch black. It wasn't more than 2 minutes after I turned the light out. I was just getting comfortable. As I was rolling onto my back and turned onto my other side, my eyes were open, and I saw this brilliant, bright flash of white light. Very similar to a concentrated ball of light from a camera flash, and just as quick. At the end of my bed, it lit up the bottom portion of my room. I felt my pupils contract, and I saw the afterglow of it, and verbally said, "What the F was that?" Unfortunately, to no witnesses. I was paralyzed with fear for at least a minute, waiting to see if it would happen again and I could pinpoint it. I finally reached up and turned my bedside light back on, and looked around to investigate the source, but there's no electronics in that area. I have no television, no other lamps, nothing plugged into that part of my room that would give it a source for a spark. There was no sound or smell. I thought at first maybe it was the fire alarm, but the alarm had no strobe, is high up on the ceiling, and only beeps. So I looked at the weather to rule out lightning, even though I have a thick blackout curtain over my window, but there had not been a storm. I looked at my phone, which was flash side down, on the book on my nightstand. Then the paranoia started, thinking maybe someone was up in my attic taking pictures from the vent. Even though the flash of light was lower to the floor, maybe in the closet? I just couldn't rationalize it, so I started thinking it was in my head. I laid awake for another hour, scrolling through my phone and just trying to settle back down until I could fall asleep. The next morning, I googled unexplained flash of bright white light in a dark room, and was astonished to find that I wasn't alone. Apparently this is some unexplained phenomena experienced by multiple people, posted across all types of forums with all types of theories throughout many years. I was so unsettled that I made an eye exam appointment that morning, and was able to get in late afternoon. I haven't had my eyes checked for the 8 years since my LASIK surgery, and wanted to rule out retinal detachment or any other issues. My exam came back 20/20 vision, healthy and normal. The doctor seemed a little baffled by the fact that I felt the physical painful flash and afterimage, and said it was possibly aura from a migraine, but I have never suffered from migraines. I didn't have a headache or even felt ill that night. Those that do have aura migraines, what are these like? Do they appear to be external, even though you know they're caused by a migraine? And are you aware the aura is from the migraine, or does it come out of nowhere and startle you? I'm a skeptic, non-religious, and non-spiritual. So I personally believe it's some strange, unidentified luminescent phenomenon that can be explained by physics, as I feel certain it was external. Case file number 2013, written by Pristine Positive 42, Deja Brew in bright pink hue. Every morning, when I go to work, I stop at a convenience store on the way and pick up a can of energy juice for the drive. I have a fairly long commute to work, so I normally finish the drink whilst on the route. Yesterday, I went to the store and picked up some new brands I hadn't tried before. It has a distinctive bright pink can. Whilst I was driving, I opened the can, took a sip, and decided I wasn't a fan, so I put it back into the cup holder and continued on my drive. This morning, I went about my routine as normal, stopped off at the store, went in and bought an old-fashioned Red Bull for the drive. I walked back to my car and saw yesterday's can still in place in the cup holder. I picked it up, feeling that it was still nearly full. Walked over to the bin, which is outside the store, and put it in. I then walked back to my car, opened the door, and freeze in place. There, in my cup holder, is the bright pink can. After standing in thought for a minute, I pick it up, still full, and walk back over to the bin, trying to process what had just happened. When I get to the bin, I peer inside and see that the bright pink can I had just placed inside was still there. I didn't care at this point, so I put my hand into the bin and picked up the can. Some of the juice had come out from the can, being slightly on its side, but it was still basically full. The bin was half full, but I couldn't see any other cans or anything resembling my drink in the bin. So there I am, standing with a can of gross bright pink energy juice in each hand, wondering, is this a glitch in the Matrix? I called my wife, who just laughed at me and said I was goofing around. Case file number 2014, written by SameFly5110. The Tree Nap Trap and the Outfit Swap. So I'd say like 5-ish years ago, I was babysitting my cousin's son. He was like 10 at the time, and lives in our hometown that's super small and kid-friendly. She lives in a condo complex, and our son asked if we could go inside. I was watching him and his 2 younger siblings, like 7 and a newborn at the time. My oldest is really good at listening to instructions, like he is a good kid. I take note of what he's wearing because I told him to change into appropriate play clothes, and that he could only play in the courtyard where I could see him from the window. Then, eventually, his mom comes home and asks where he is, and I tell her I let him play in the courtyard. He's not there at all. We start searching, yelling for him. Neighbors and other family members that live nearby come to help out. The police come and search inside her condo and in his room. As they're about to make the call to start a literal search around town, we're talking in the courtyard at this point, he walks out of the condo, out the front door, and is in an entirely different outfit than what he left to play in. The cop himself was confused because he also searched in the condo. He literally went back in to make sure there were no secret tunnels, in his words, because it just made no sense. I asked my cousin's son what happened and where he was, and he said, "I laid down under that tree," and he points to a nearby tree in the courtyard. "And then I fell asleep, and then I saw a bright light, and I woke up in my bedroom." Case file number 2015, written by Leave Me Alone. Ring and Bling, a vanishing thing. I have this pretty black and gold ring I got at an art event. There were tons just like it, so it wasn't like it was one of a kind special or anything. But I've worn this ring with almost all my outfits. One night, when my friends were about to head out, I went to the bathroom on a college campus and set my ring on the counter to wash my hands. I always remember to grab it, but for some reason, I don't remember this time. Walking out and leaving, the ring popped into my head as I realized it wasn't on my finger. I checked my pockets and it wasn't in them. I rushed back to the bathroom and found the counter empty. I was a little disappointed as I realized it was gone, but I try not to dwell on materialistic things. I let it go and moved on. A few days went by and I was in a rush out the door. I couldn't find my usual earbuds, so I grabbed my spare ones from a jar on the dresser. I froze as, in the tangled bunch of the earbuds, I saw my ring. I had a full WTF moment. I had not touched these earbuds since I moved in months ago, and I haven't put anything else in the jar, let alone the ring I'd lost. It broke my brain, and it was a subject I thought over and over again. After a while, I just accepted the weirdness of it, and soon forgot about it. That was until I'd lost it again. My guess how this happened was when I got off the bus. It slipped off my finger, because I remember having it on the bus. Then when I was walking home, it was gone. I retraced my steps, looking for it on the ground, but couldn't find it. I checked my pockets and my bag, which it wasn't in it. Stupidly, I got a little too excited as I rushed back home and checked the jar, expecting it to be another weird incident, but alas, it wasn't in the jar. Again, I was disappointed it was gone, but more so upset that my jar wasn't magic. The night went on, and I forgot about it. I sat down to do some art, got my yarn, and when I opened my crochet bag, Mind you, a zipped bag I keep in my dresser drawer that doesn't even leave my room. In it, I found my ring. Case file number 2016, written by Janimbus. A snap, a mark, and a kid gone dark. I was around 7 or 8 years old. I was staying with my grandmother and her dog on a Saturday. I would sleep in her room with her and the dog. The room was on one end of the apartment, and the hallway leading from it had rooms on the right side and the kitchen to the left. The hallway led to the dining room and living room. The phone rang, and my grandmother asked me to get it, as she figured it was my mom checking up on me. This was the only phone in the house, and it was a pink dial phone that was placed in an old chest box. The chest box was adjacent to the living room furniture, which were a couch and 2 armchairs. All 3 pieces of furniture were cloth that reached the floor, perfectly covering a gap between the ground and the furniture. I have night vision problems, and also was not a savage, so I turned on the hallway lights on my way to pick up the phone. The armchair closest to the phone faced away from the phone, and was at a distance that I could lean back on it and the cord would still reach. So I pick up the phone and it's my mom, and as I'm talking to her, I feel a hand grab my ankle from under the armchair. My mom noticed I stopped talking, and I told her Grandma was playing a trick on me, but I wasn't scared. The grip got tighter around my bare ankle, and I heard the dog start barking loudly, all the way from my grandmother's room. Then I heard my grandmother, from her room, ask who was on the phone. I started screaming and trying to kick off, and I couldn't get off at first. I threw the phone to the ground and ran to my grandmother's room. I have no explanation, and neither did my grandmother. Another experience. In 1st grade, I had this kid on my bus route that I would never see in school. I'd always just see him in the afternoons getting on the bus, in the same uniform as me, and would stay on the bus past my route. After a while, I have no idea how long, we would talk about our day, and he told me about how he knew magic. He would always show me what, as an adult, I now know were sleight-of-hand tricks. But he had this one trick he showed me. He could make fire from snapping his fingers, and would stay there for a few seconds. I remember thinking it was a match or a lighter, but I would never be able to catch it. I kept asking him to show me, and he finally did. Literally all he did was put his fingers after snapping on my fingers, and I could do it briefly. It never hurt, it just felt slightly hotter than warm. I just remember for some days on the bus I kept doing it, and he told me not to do it too much. I accidentally put my hands too close to the side of the bus, which had a gray cloth interior, and left a burn mark on it. The next day he wasn't there anymore. I couldn't do it, and never saw him again. The burn mark stayed there for years, and I never got an answer. My aunt worked at the school, and when I was in 5th grade, I went with her to help her switch offices and saw the bus driver. I went and peeked through the window to the spot where the kid and I sat, and the burn mark was still there. Case file number 2017, written by Jadinia. From Bar to Bizarre, the Time Twist Memoir. Some years ago, I worked as a cocktail waitress at a bar in LA. Bar closed at 2 a.m., and it usually took us an hour or more to clean up and close. I lived about a mile away, so I would often stop at the convenience store after work and get something to eat, microwave crab, etc. I remember looking at the clock in the store, and it said something like 1:35. I dismissed it because I know about what time it was, and I buy my crap and go home. I get home and my roommate is still up. I comment to him that he's up late, and he turns and asks why I'm home early. You can see where this is going. So we, at each other, check the clocks in the apartment. Call time. Yes, this is how long ago it was. And sit for a moment trying to figure out what's going on. It's not daylight savings time, and the time wasn't just off by an hour anyways, so we can't figure it out. I even call my work, but the number is busy and later no one answers. Next night, I go to work I asked my boss if he turned the clock ahead. I mean, it seems unlikely to me, but maybe. He told me no and seemed puzzled that I would ask. I then asked my coworkers and boss what time they got home, and everyone got home at the correct time, except for me. Case file number 2018, written by La Louise. Disappearing coat, rekindled hope. My boyfriend bought a Nike jacket in December 2023, January 2024. Can't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure that I wore it the last time in March 2024 and left it where we put all our jackets, a sort of wardrobe. But since that day, this jacket was nowhere to be found. We cleaned that area hundreds of times. I've taken the photo in front of the wardrobe and there was no Nike jacket. My boyfriend thought that I'd lost it, and I agreed with that. 2 days ago, I was getting ready for work, looking for a jacket to wear, and the jacket was there on a hanger on the far right, away from the other jackets. I could not believe my eyes. Was it there like it was always there? I found photos of this area a week ago, and it was not in the wardrobe. My boyfriend was shocked and repeatedly said that life was pranking us. But now I have a theory. When he bought this jacket, we were a happy couple. Everything was fine. But in February or March 2024, my boyfriend lost his job, and our relationship was in trouble. Since he stopped working because of a lack of affection and time together, the jacket disappears. And now that we are working for our relationship to heal, the jacket reappears. Case file number 2019, written by Naomi. A pub, a quiz, and the questions that fizzed. On our trip to the UK in 2011, my husband and my cousin and I got in on a pub quiz in York. We weren't really interested at first, so we didn't take any answer sheets. But to pass the time, I went ahead and started writing down the answers on my own sheet of paper. I started with number 1, so we didn't miss any. Around number 15, I believe, I heard the lady who was calling out the questions skip to 17 or something. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I know she skipped at least 2. As my husband was at the bar at the moment, I looked to my cousin for confirmation that I had heard correctly, and he agreed that he had skipped a couple of numbers. I expected some participant in the quiz to correct her or ask about it, but nobody said anything. The lady went on calling out questions. She continued in order to number 25, then suddenly she skipped to 29. Again, this anomaly was confirmed by my cousin, and also my husband, who was back at the table. And again, nobody corrected the lady or asked about the skipped numbers. I could only assume that 1, the quiz worked in some odd way we weren't familiar with, or 2, somebody would point out the mistake before the lady called out the answers. Maybe ask what those questions were. However, that never happened. The question stopped at 30, and then the lady began calling out the answers. I waited curiously for her to get to the number she had skipped. I was positive that when she called out these answers, somebody in the pub would protest and say that she never had even given out the questions. Instead, when she did get to those numbers, 16, 26 to 28, I remembered those questions being called out. By the end of the answers, I realized that every answer she had called out had been to a question that I had in fact heard her ask. What's more, my husband and cousin were both remembering those questions too. The fact that I literally keep track on paper makes this even weirder. We couldn't figure it out. We never did figure it out. Incidentally, we were sipping on our first beer, so it's not like we were drunk. There appeared to be no confusion in the pub whatsoever. Unfortunately, we didn't think to ask anyone else in the pub if they had observed the same thing we did. I wish so much that we had. Case file number 2020, written by Bethy Don't Surf. Glitch in time, 7:30 chimed. My boyfriend and I had a glitch. Well, more like time just stopped. Hang in there with me for this story. Myself and my boyfriend and his son were getting into the car after dinner. He made a point to point at the clock at 6:45 p.m. and say boyfriend's daughter should be finished with her cheerleading and should be heading home at around 8. So it was 6:45 p.m. It takes around 15 minutes to get back to our house from dinner. We got home, we messed around for let's say another 20 minutes, and then started a movie. Here's where the glitch happens. My boyfriend turned to me almost all the way through the movie and asked what time it was. I tapped my phone to check and it was 7:30 p.m. 7:30. He just sat straight up and paused the movie. I didn't even get it at first. He started saying, "Oh my God, we lost an hour." I then understood what he was saying and asked to see how far into the movie we were. The time on the movie said we had watched an hour and 20 minutes. There was no way we could have driven home from dinner, hung out, and watched an hour and 20 minutes of a movie, and it was 7:30 p.m.? It's like time stopped. Case file number 2021, written by Crispy Nuggle Kitties. Cheddar confusion in a sealed illusion. Yesterday morning, my 3-year-old daughter wanted cheese. I usually cut her a piece from a block of cheddar. I remembered opening a new package of cheddar last week and giving her some, so I went to grab it from the fridge. I always keep it in the same basket of cheeses in the fridge, so I knew exactly where it was. When I pulled it out though, the package was sealed, completely unopened, like it was brand new. I thought it must be mistaken, so I spent some time checking the package to see if it was actually open anywhere, but it wasn't. It was definitely sealed. Confused, I went back to the fridge to look for the open package, but there wasn't another one. I tore off the plastic strip that seals the bag, opened it, and the cheese inside was already cut and used, just like I remembered from last week. The edge of the block was cut, and there was even a loose chunk of cheese where my daughter hadn't finished the piece I cut for her before. But this was all inside a sealed bag. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I wish I'd taken a video when I opened it yesterday, but I had a very hangry toddler urging me, so I just quickly cut her some cheese while standing there completely baffled. Case file number 2022, written by endometrial carcinoma. Koi's double plot, a fishy knot. Yesterday, I removed the net over my pond to find that my only Mayan koi and calico goldfish were dead. Both had signs of injury to their bodies. My mother watched me dig a hole in the ground and put my Mayan koi in. On top of the koi, I put my larger calico goldfish and covered both with dirt. I added a pile of stones on top of the grave to make sure that my chickens don't dig it up. That night, I made sure to secure every inch of the net to ensure that no animals could get into the pond and kill any other fish. This morning I took the net off the pond and watched as the same Mayan koi I had buried floated up to the top of the pond. It had a bit of dirt caked on its body. My mother saw me pull the same fish out of the pond again. We checked the grave and it was completely undisturbed. I ended up digging the grave and found the same fish still buried underneath the calico goldfish. It was identical in every way to the fish I had just pulled out of the pond, even down to the scratches on its flank. I know for a fact I only had one Mayan koi. I distinctly remember considering buying two in case one didn't make it, but I decided to only get the one so that I would have the space in my pond to get another koi if I saw the perfect one. I have no idea how I could have had two completely identical koi with identical injuries in the same exact place. Case notes from 1961, the case of the clock's quack, when time took a snack. Right on, so we can discount daylight savings as the time difference was greater than an hour, which is something I always like to do in these time events because people will always first think to daylight savings, which is the natural occurrence, if something is out of phase with time. And in effect, the only thing that can possibly fit here, given that other universes operate at the same time, it can't be quantum immortality or some transfer to a different universe, so it had to be temporal. You literally did zip back in time, with the pizza still in your stomach. If we remember, even localized to our own universe, there is no absolute time. So really to say that all universes operate at the same clock, probably isn't correct. Within the same frame of reference they should, but maybe something happened in this different universe that shifted the relative time between them. So you were back in time in a different universe, via quantum immortality most likely. Case notes file 1962. Comfort in chaos, where nightmares stand. Yeah, the first encounter could have been sleep paralysis. My guess is that sleep paralysis, the fictions that are created, they may appear when there are entities around, but we fill in the gaps of what those entities are like. They're probably not all nefarious. You probably do have a ghost or had a ghost in that house, as evidenced by the toast and the toaster machine, the crumbs. Though, even that is sort of inexplicable from a spiritual perspective, because the ghost couldn't reclaim and reset all the crumbs on the counter multiple times. If you knock crumbs off the counter, try to get them all back in the same spot they were in. That's tricky business, to say the least. And why would you do that? I mean, even as a prank, it's not even very good, I'd say. So I could say an entity was involved, but it could have been beyond just a ghost. Now, time for the joke of the day. I broke up with my girlfriend because she's left-handed. It wasn't right. Case notes from 1963. The light turned green, but fate intervened. Guardian angel strikes again in the most positive of way. To literally control the acceleration rate of a car, perhaps warping the time itself within a localized bubble. So from an outside perspective, you were traveling as fast as a car could go, gunning it as you say, but you were transfixed, rooted into this little bubble of space-time. But that's just a guess on how a guardian angel could control an entire car. Like, I don't think they're Superman, they're gifted Superman powers, there's an invisible man in front of the car just holding it. Although that would be kind of cool if that's the case. So maybe that's what I should believe. Case notes found 1964. With a call to the darkness, I opened the door. So to literally make it clear to this entity that you wanted it to attach itself to you. Whoa. Your friend was probably happy because if it's attached to you, it probably can't be attached to him. Or I guess maybe it could. Maybe it split itself in two to do it. Because you mentioned later on that whenever something happened to you, it would happen to him too. So it sounds like whatever this thing was split into two. But that should reduce its potency, if you think about it. Either way, it's good for your friend who was forever tethered and attached to this entity that just wasn't a positive force. It's the note of dread that really gets me. Again, I always say that I don't think most entities are evil, but some of them would be. It's like humans. There's only a small percentage of people that are truly malicious, sadistic. But if those die and become this entity, or convert into some deeper demon of some sort, well, you do not want those attached to you. So wherever you're at out there, never say, attach to me, to some entity in the area. That's not a good idea. It does appear that permission, consent, is a governing force of reality. So if you invite something into your home, if you consent to possession, something like that, it definitely opens the door. So don't do that. Keep it locked. Now time for the joke of the day. I got a call from school telling me that my son connected a battery to the classroom doorknob. When the teacher found out, he was shocked. When he got home, I told him he is grounded. He was regretful and did not resist. He is punished until he learns how to conduct himself. Perfect. Okay, sounds from 1965. The haunted house's blackened soul were not in control. So, given the manipulation of perception or even space-time itself, I don't think this was a haunting. I think it goes beyond it. This house was out of place in time and even perhaps the universe. And if we think about it, we can transmit ourselves to different universes, not by will, but if a human can go, objects disappear all the time. They move back and forth in DOP, re-rendering, duplication, and so on. And I've asked myself many times, what is the size limitation? Is there a size limitation? What if an entire house was moved? An entire area, a neighborhood? And that could, layered on top of each other, create this effect where you go back to the same place and it's entirely different. The pathways are different even. It's almost like the staircases in Hogwarts, always shifting themselves, although in this case, extremely rarely. Case notes from 1966. The pouch that puzzled, my mind did fuddle. Right, so this one's such a small glitch, but would it be a de-render and re-render? When you weren't looking, the pouch disappeared and re-rendered as something it wasn't before, but it still had the paper in it. So it re-rendered just with this little notch on it, the plastic tab to keep it from being unzipped. That kind of fits, but outside of that, I'm just not sure. Classic glitch indeed. Caissons found 1967. Shadows in the Sun and A Little Girl's Fun. I like your positive attitude towards the end, and in general, I don't think most spirits are evil. I think if you're in some random cemetery, and most of them, it's going to be filled with maybe 100% good people, or just people, good and bad, but overall not a malicious spirit. It is sad to think about a little girl who might have passed away early, prematurely, extremely prematurely. If I was her, I would just be out and about trying to enjoy the day. I do wonder if these fragments, these echoes, can they enjoy the same things humans do when they're alive, like the warmth of the sun on their skin? Or can they eat? We've had a few cases where possibly spirits can eat, but what happens? Can they taste the flavors? Of course, there's no bacteria inside them, so the food can't digest. It would just be mush, undigested mush somewhere. It would pass right through them after they phase away. So I don't know about all those details, but overall, I'd say this is a wholesome story, which ghost cemeteries, you wouldn't think it's wholesome, but in my view it is. Now time for the joke of the day. My wife was blaming me for ruining her birthday. That's ridiculous. I didn't even know today was her birthday. So it looks like someone is going to join that little girl in the cemetery. Caissons found 1968. Whispers in the Stars, Over the Forgotten Hour. This had the initial formations of a great date. Sounds cool, relaxing. But what happened after? I mean, there's a vibe that if this was a man you had just met, I would be assuming something else entirely that I can't even say. But because you've known each other for a while at this point, and obviously you were already together, it doesn't seem likely he would have done anything, so I don't think it's that. You do mention feeling a presence lurking behind the light and wanting to go back to light after driving away. Maybe this was an alien abduction. Haven't had many stories like that lately, but this has the characteristics of it. Passing out, missing time, feeling anxious, nervous after. If there's any markings on your bodies, check that. Could be evidence of it. But then, honestly, maybe you don't want to know. Because the trauma of it, yeah. I can only imagine. And I don't want to experience that. No sane person should, I think. It's kind of like the people who chase hurricanes or tornadoes just for fun, not for scientific advancement. I get the appeal in some sense, but don't do it. Don't chase after aliens. Caissons found 1969. The artist flow, but where'd the paint go? This is bizarre because the cases where time slows down like this are often attributed to cases where someone would be injured. There was a case where someone was nailing something and they saw it in slow motion. Another one where I think they were opening a fridge or something was falling on them and things were slowing down. Now I think probably it is a guardian angel manipulating the time in the environment, but for the object, not for you. Why would they do that for a glob of paint? That wouldn't have caused any harm to anyone. And then it wasn't even there later on after the time went back to normal. So it was a slowdown and then complete removal? But why? For paint? I don't think this was a guardian angel. There's no sense in that. So probably an actual bug in the system. And it makes sense. If guardian angels, let's call them game developers, game masters, have this mechanism to slow down time, then perhaps that mechanism can be triggered accidentally by some error in the code or someone else that hit the wrong button in the real world. Someone fat-fingered slow down time, and then it just affected this glob of paint. Bizarre, but it fits. Caissons found 1970. The dials twist with an ominous mist. Yeah, I don't actually know the washing machine you're talking about, because I only remember using washing machines that are digital. You just push a button and it registers eventually and starts. And you hear the locking mechanism click and the water flow in. That's it. So I don't know about a washing machine that would have a knob that you have to twist and doesn't go back to that setting even after it's over. Okay. Well, whatever washing machine that is, clearly if you've run it multiple times and it didn't do it again, does suggest that some force, maybe a human, but why, intervened with it. But it's altogether weird. Why would they do that? That would be a very weird break-in. Like people who break into homes just to clean. I've heard about that happening. But I wonder how real that is. It's kind of funny, but risking a break and entering charge just to clean a house? I mean, it is a wholesome prank, but it's very risky. And I guess not even a prank, it's just strange benevolence. In this case, it's a chaotic evil, or not even evil, chaotic neutral-ish character that breaks in and just messes with you by shutting off the washing machine and then running away. Kinda sounds like something I'd do, so maybe just a nefarious little poltergeist spirit. Now time for the joke of the day. I just broke up with my mathematician girlfriend because she was obsessed with an X. Damn variable stealing my girl. Okay, so it's from 1971. Ontario Sorrow, and a meeting that shook my tomorrow. Okay, so hold up, right? This is one of the most creepy stories I've ever read. Not initially, but towards the end, when this old lady says, "We've been watching you? What the F are you talking about? Who is we? And who the hell are you?" It sounds like alien vibes or Adjustment Bureau, something like that. Who are you? What do you want? How do you know who the hell I am? Why have you been watching me? I got no answers besides aliens, woo! Grow my hair out. Creepy as hell. Okay, so it's from 1972. The Invisible Remote with a Chilling Note. So you're absolutely right that moms can find anything. I've seen a few memes of that on Instagram where someone's in the fridge looking for an item and they ask, "Mom, can you help me?" The mom comes in and then it's just a clip, a shot of the fridge again. And the object they're looking for materializes it from thin air, and the mom pulls it out. What? That wasn't there. But they always find it. It's bizarre. In this case, they didn't find it. It was you. And it was a classic case of DOP re-render. Bizarre stuff that happens all the time. Maybe somehow moms can control when an object re-renders. They're in on it. The day they become mothers, they're read into the secret code of the universe and told, "You can't tell anyone. You can use the power, but it has to be quiet. Keep it on the down low." Okay, so it's from 1973. Escape and Return. Lessons to Learn. More shenanigans from dogs. What a shocker. But as you say, you felt them run past you. Presumably you chased after them, you saw them up ahead. There's no way that didn't happen. You didn't imagine the sensation, the rush of air as they brushed past you. That all happened. But then they were ported back at some point. Some sort of space-time anomaly. But again, why would a random anomaly port them back inside the house? Doesn't make sense unless someone was looking out for you and literally opened a portal, like Doctor Strange opening a portal with Loki, so he falls endlessly. But instead it just pops them back into the into the living room. Yeah, definitely someone has a way to control these portals out there. And I guess guardian angels do. That would be an indication of that, in this case. Case notes file 1974. Midnight Math, busted by a time warp's wrath. Yeah, even seeing the same cows again. That would be trippy. But again, we're just back to space-time portals. On a road, these are probably just laid there by the government, by aliens, by something, as a kind of test. And clearly they're not random, they're not porting people, presumably, inside the Earth or out in outer space. It's really specific areas, but that also makes you a bit unnerved to drive, because these are coordinate systems, I would imagine. You have starting coordinates and ending coordinates. But if one of those coordinates is off by just a little bit, you could end up just materializing inside the Earth, and your momentum is conserved, so you'd be inside the Earth, you would, inside the car, flatten into the car itself, and that would be an unfortunate experience. Or just rise above it a bit and your car is damaged and nasty bump from it too. So yeah, even though these portals appear not to be random, it doesn't mean that they're always safe. So it makes me wary to go on the road. Now time for the joke of the day. I accidentally changed the car's GPS voice to male. Now it says, "It's around here somewhere. Keep driving." We don't ask for directions, we'll figure it out. Okay, so it's from 1975. The Midnight Dog and a Trucker's Blog. So I looked it up and there's a few points. First, black dogs are said to bring about an omen of death. It's actually found in Harry Potter too. But it's just funny how that mythos can spread around in so many different formats and even infiltrate into our art. But also it's known as the Black Shuck in the UK. which I found it interesting that even across the pond, people have the same experiences. So the idea that it's pure hallucination doesn't seem likely to me, because why would people hallucinate the same thing? That's not a hallucination. That is seeing beyond the pale. That is seeing beyond what we're normally allowed to. Maybe that does involve being tired. Maybe when you're tired, different pathways open up in your mind. But then, was the entire accident of hitting this dog or bear or whatever it ended up being truly just in your mind? The way hallucinations work. After the fact, you tend to know that they're hallucinations. There's obvious signs. If there's no signs to you, then I think it might have been quantum immortality, where you saw this omen of death, and then you actually did die. But in the process, the damage to your truck did happen in the original universe, where maybe the front hood did flip so fast up into the actual driving compartment and cause issues for you. I could see that being the case. But now the first story. Is it a glitch? Who's to say? Is it just a coincidence? A very, very unlikely coincidence. But if it was a glitch, what could it be? What would cause man and machine to become tethered to that extent? Where if the owner dies, the truck dies as well. I wonder what was physically wrong with the truck to cause it to not start. I'm sure they inspected it after the fact and there was something wrong. It wasn't just that it was perfect and yet wouldn't start. Or if that is the case, then something had to be physically blocking it. I don't know much about trucks or cars, but there's so many moving parts, it wouldn't be hard to disrupt it if you wanted to. And you could get in there, like a spirit. Maybe for some reason after the man died, he stopped his own truck, just didn't want anyone else to drive it. Sentimental reasons, I guess. Now time for the joke of the day. Putin dies and goes to hell. After a while, he's given a day off for good behavior. So he goes to Moscow, enters a bar, orders a drink and asks the bartender, "Is Crimea ours?" "Yes, it is." "And the Donbass?" "Also ours." "Kiev?" "We got that too." Satisfied, he drinks and asks, "Thanks, how much do I owe you?" €5. Well, they got it all right. Caissons found 1976. In waves they come, acting so dumb. So I had to look that up. I'd never heard of the Schumann resonance before, but it's a real phenomenon where the different electrical charges discharged static electricity in the air via lightning. The waves themselves generated in the air, well, they can interact, and that process does create a different vibration, a frequency in the atmosphere. Very interesting to read up on. Never occurred to me that was happening, and could that resonance have an impact on people? Maybe. Now, I don't think it could turn them into weird zombies that are controlled and sent to some random restaurant or chain to mess with the employees. That's strange, but then you do say that it corresponds with it, like different activity in the air. Do I ever notice that when there's lightning storms, a greater charge in the air, that people behave differently? I don't know. Have I? Haven't given that any thought at all, but I'll pay attention. Who's to say? I know I get excited when there's lightning storms. Something about it is soothing to me, as long as there's no tornadoes or anything. And as long as you don't lose power, because that's just boring. Of all the lists of things that you describe happening that are strange, the strangest one by far is where someone orders food, is in the drive-thru, and then the car itself vanishes. How do you explain that? You have cameras everywhere. If someone's moving up or back, you would see it, and they just disappear. How do you explain that? They didn't drive through the shrubbery on one side, you would also see evidence of that happening. So, unless they flew up or teleported away, what would cause that? Is it a random space-time portal in the drive-thru of your restaurant? Who would put it there? Why? Why? It's always the question on my mind where these space-time portals come involved. Purely tests? I guess we'll never know, but maybe being around the space-time portal could impact the personalities of people as well. But then I don't know what would cause people to come into a restaurant where the setup of the people in the car is completely random. This group of people that doesn't seem like they belong. I don't know. That's an oddity as well, for sure. Now time for the joke of the day. My brother had to quit his job as a weightlifter because he wasn't strong enough. He handed in his 2-week notice yesterday. Caissons found 1977. Chess set blues, pawns we lose. Well, no reappearance effect in this case, but it's almost like whoever stole it wanted you to realize, yeah, this is not normal. You already realized it a bit, but they wanted to make sure you truly processed. This is a glitch. Something abnormal happened here and there is no explanation. And I think that's all there is to say about this one. They wanted you to know, whoever they is. Case notes from 1978. Money gone next? A pocketbook mystery that leaves me vexed. Really sorry about the migraines and yours truly gets them all the time too. Well, I used to, if I go out in the sun, without my sunglasses. Really feel like a vampire sometimes. Anyways, I think the medication can be forgiven, but stealing money, come on. Ghosts or glitches or server developers can do better than being money thieves. Do better. Case notes from 1979. Out of Sight, A Tale of Digital Day and Night. Now, this is the most solid DOP event I've ever read. Mainly because you are directly in connection with Google Tracker, whatever they call it, where you can call your phone, lock it, etc. I should get that set up for myself too. But yes, you had the website open, you tried to initiate it, and it couldn't connect. And then, a few minutes later, it could. Unless the phone was somehow in a Faraday cage, someone's broken to your house, took the phone, put it in a Faraday cage for 15-20 minutes, and then, what? They just brought it back? Why? That is more unbelievable in every conceivable way, to me, than it just being a glitch. And yeah, DOP, most common glitch, but it's always interesting to me. The phone literally phased out of existence, and I don't see any other explanation. Now time for the joke of the day. My son asked my wife why I make noises every time I stand up. She told him it's because I'm a grown man. Okay, so it's from 1980. A beach day mystery that's hard to put underfoot. Yeah, I've walked through parking lots before, and it sucks. If it's a asphalt parking lot, cement, or just gravel, it all heats up a lot. So there's pointing. Who knows if there's like glass on the road? You do not want to do that. It sucks. So whoever did this clearly was a prankster. Now, was their motive pure? Just playing a prank, bro? I guess so. Why else would they put it back there? And it couldn't have been a human being, could it? Unless they were stalking you. They were literally just some weirdo that was at the beach and wanted to play a prank on some random unsuspecting family. So they observed one particular car, saw you get out, saw you where you put your sandals. I guess that could be possible. That would be much creepier, for sure. Case notes from 1981. Granny's otherworldly plea. Clean the floor. Don't let it be. My grandmother and my mother are the same way, and that's nothing wrong with that. Tidy. She was still around, lingering to make sure that no one messes up the house while she's gone. Are you gonna be the neat freak ghost when you go? I probably would be. Case notes from 1982. Perfectly aligned. The tale of a banana and time combined. Okay, I got nothing for this one. Honestly, not a clue. What could reset a clock and then leave a banana peel behind? There's nothing that connects in that I can think about. Can anyone else think of anything that would fit? So the clock is reset to correct time via daylight savings, and a banana peel is left behind. Frickin' King Kong is up here just changing clocks? I don't get it. It's such a bizarre glitch, but I love it, and it's even better that I don't know what the hell happened. Space-time portal that ported in a monkey that changed the clock? Or the portal itself fixed the clock and the monkey came in, left a banana peel and ported out? I got nothing. Now time for the joke of the day. A polar bear walks into a bar and says, "I'll take a rum and a Coke." The bartender says, "What's with the paws?" The polar bear says, "I was born with them." Case notes from 1983. Naked and Strange. A glimpse through the range. So up until the point you mentioned that no young girl lives there, it didn't really seem like a glitch to me, maybe confusion. But now that you mention that the young girl wasn't living there, well, it must have been a spirit, right? And if you think about it, why do spirits even come clothed when they manifest themselves, because they can do that. Almost never are they reported to be naked, but yet, if you're an echo, you die and you're now an echo, a fragment of a soul, an imprint on the world. You keep your clothes? Is the universe itself trying to be PG-13 or something? Is like baked into the program, whatever you die in, you keep forever? Or while the fragment lasts? Huh. Just thinking about that now, but again, even then, if you die when you're naked, your birthday suit is what you have, that's it? And so the spirit was just like lingering and longing for the days of yore, reminiscing on our past life, but then, why the stretching? Maybe the couple did have a girl over, and she was just out of it? I guess that's also possible. If it's a spirit, though, it really does beg those questions. If you die naked, do you remain a naked ghost if you manifest? I guess that's kind of funny. Okay, so it's from 1984. The Bentley that never was. Yeah, sure, he could be lying, but I don't think that's the case. This is solid evidence that you're in a different world. Because why would he lie about that? Really, doesn't make sense. A Bentley is an object of admiration and achievement. It's something you would brag about having had if you did have it. I think it's better than a Porsche or whatever, or a Jaguar. Cougar? What the hell car did he have? I forgot. But yeah, nothing wrong with being in a different universe, just check for more signs. But everything should function more or less the same. Okay, sounds from 1985. Gates Mystery, Screw's Return History. Alright, this is an eerie one. Maybe the mention of the storm has me on edge, even though I like thunderstorms. There's still a charge, a crackle to them, you could say. But in this case, it's almost like the lightning storm cracked apart the membrane between universes, so you were seeing into a different one, and I think it makes sense. If that is possible, it would require a lot of energy. And what does a lightning storm bring? A lot of energy, and lightning especially. It's almost like in that movie, The Mist, at the start. The thunderstorm and the fog rolling in was part of an experiment. And if you apply that to the real world, even if no one is conducting an experiment per se, maybe they are though, that could be related to parallel worlds and peering through the looking glass. It may just take enough of a certain type of energy to break through, temporarily, of course. And then a reset back, when you went to check later, voila. All good, because it happened in a different universe. So many things can just be said like that. Don't worry, you're not crazy. It just happened in a different universe. Could print that on a shirt. Now time for the joke of the day. If King Kong went to Hong Kong to play ping pong and died, what would they put on his coffin? A lid. Okay, so it's from 1986. John who died? John who's still alive. I certainly don't believe this could be a misunderstanding, because John apparently came over a few times since you thought he died. If that's the case, you couldn't have missed him. This whole situation would have been brought up back then, because you would have still believed he was dead. So you wouldn't have waited until now to question, why is John alive? Frankly, the most simple solution is quantum immortality. He did die in a different universe, exactly as you remember, but in this one, he was saved, purely if not for Liz forgetting something back at home. Sometimes these small choices we make, or even small accidents in this case, they have profound ripple effects throughout the entirety of our history, even human history. I always like to come back to the butterfly effect, where a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and causes a hurricane in Florida. Because of chaos, even the tiniest change in the input variable creates vastly different divergent endpoints or even through paths. Even the smallest action we take can have incredible meaning. We just won't always be aware because we don't know what would have happened if we didn't make those choices. You can't go back and replay. At least, we're not aware if we can. Now time for the joke of the day. According to my 10-year-old, the thing about dad jokes is you just change the D to B and you have the truth. Yeah, I can't argue with that, but they're so bad they're good. Okay, so it's from 1987. Going up, going down. No one makes a sound. It always comes back to elevators, but usually in things disappearing or phasing out from our reality temporarily, or even transitioning to different universes. Something about an enclosed metal box, creates this effect. Now, to be fair, it's still a small percentage of total interactions with elevators because people take them every single day. And it's only a very tiny percent of the time that it actually results in a glitch. But there's so many that I can't just toss them away, saying, yeah, there's something up with elevators. I don't know exactly what it is. The enclosure, the metal box, I don't know. Some factor is involved. But this one is unique because it's not really a glitch as we know it. No one disappeared. Nothing all that weird happened. Now, could it have been a prank of sorts with the students there, just pretending to not know what's going on, to be silent, to act like they don't belong, pressing buttons, not getting off, etc.? Sure, I could see that as possible. Though it would require quite a bit of coordination. And it seems like it's not something you do unless you are being recorded for your reaction, and then usually they tell you after the fact, after you've been pranked. They don't just let you wander off, gaslighting your brain into mind-fricking your brain and never letting you recover. Sometimes I guess that's possible that they do, but yeah. If it is a glitch though, it does seem like these people were just placeholders. And I know it's weird to say that, to talk about other people like they're not real. And I would never make that assumption. I don't think anyone should. But in a situation like this, you have to ask yourself, were they real, so-called? Again, if it is a glitch and not a prank, it seems like it's just placeholder NPCs that are just wandering around because they needed something to load in. So the body was there, but nothing attached to it. No soul driving the car. Just autopilot. Okay, so it's found 1988. The Wedding Band's Magic Hand. Tremendously sorry for your loss. This kind of blindsided me. I went into the story blind as I was reading it, and damn. Losing someone recently like that, and the closing remark is simply, yes, your husband is still around, and he wanted to leave you a sign. And I think maybe when you cross over, you're even given the opportunity to interact with the simulation more, maybe with the guidance of a developer or game master. So just asking the question, could I maybe make a ring, my wedding ring, appear to her in a place that obviously is impossible unless it had been done before, but obviously you know it wasn't because of how this happened. Just enough to give a sign. Like, I'm still out here, I can't come back to you, but the game's not over for me. And I think that's enough. That'd be enough for me to at least be at peace. Now time for the joke of the day. 2 bacteria walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Sorry, but we don't serve bacteria here." To which the bacteria reply with, "But we work here. We're staff." Oh man. Okay, so it's from 1989. Victoria's Secret. I wonder, as you're approaching your final moments, or maybe dementia itself, maybe it's a kind of discombobulation of, or a jumble of different alternate realities happening concurrently, and you need a fully formed and operating mind to keep it coherent. If you're suffering from this disease, then your mind's not capable of sorting them correctly and understanding the reality you currently occupy. So he was being confused because what he was seeing was a girl that was called Victoria. The you in a different copy of you. That is an interesting way to look at it. I don't know if it has any validity though, but just spitballing, I think it makes some sense. The alternative is it was just a coincidence. Maybe his wife or someone he knew that was important was called Victoria, and he was seeing her and you. Okay, so it's from 1990. Dragons and Dreamy Fish. So here's the question. Did your dream self conjure this necklace to bring it there? Or maybe not conjure it from nothing, but pull it from somewhere else? Or was it always there? And maybe you had realized this subconsciously, going out into the garden earlier that day or a day or so ago. Your subconscious incorporated this into the dream, so then you'd find it later on. Either way, maybe the second isn't a glitch, but it still fascinates me because of how incredible the mind is, even at base level. That said, it doesn't explain why your mom didn't remember you talking about the necklace, but your cousin did. So it's still the same universe. Maybe your mom just has a bad memory. I'm not sure on that one. Now time for the joke of the day. My wife called to tell me she saw a fox on the way to work. I asked her how she knew it was on its way to work. She hung up on me. What does the fox say? Okay, so it's from 1991. Echoes of a jay on a warm spring day. Okay, so there's two sides to this. Was this just a random person that, indeed as you say, was happy that a younger woman was paying attention to him? But he looked so familiar and even had the same leather straps and stuff in the car. It seems unlikely that this was just a random person. But if it was the Jay you knew, why did he only smile at you? Normally, if you recognize someone in public that, you're familiar with or very close to, you'll approach them, not just smile and wave. So that seems like a disconnect, but maybe it really was just seeing into a different parallel universe where Jay is still alive. Though even in that case, why would he be in this specific store? Seems odd. And the timing has to be, even then, it could be a glitch, but it's still a coincidence, just for the timing of the place you're in to see him. The other alternative is some witness protection, faked his death or something, but I definitely side on this being the person you knew, in one version or another. Okay, so it's found 1992. Wrong car, right punch. My friend in the crunch. Okay, this is just funny. I mean, you can't deny if you were in this person's position, you would be laughing like crazy, confused, befuddled, out of your mind, but laughing like hell. Punching his fat, watching it ripple around. But it's just a stranger. Or was it your friend from a different universe? But in that universe, he doesn't know you? Why would he be there? If not to pick you up, even if it's a different universe. Maybe you look different than what he was expecting? Maybe thinner? So he was confused because it didn't seem like it was you because it wasn't his you. Sort of like an imperfect doppelganger. Okay, so it's from 1993. Physics-defying chair. Aldi's strange affair. Well, it sounds like this Aldi is suffering from a poltergeist of sorts. The haunting of Aldi. Just that in of itself is kind of funny. Can imagine Casper haunting the grounds of Aldi and having the store make its name and reputation based on being haunted. Or it was literally just an anomaly in the local regional physics that occupied those chairs. Then you ask yourself, okay, well, what if that anomaly had affected someone else, a real human being? They would have flown off, banged their head and their body and broken bones. So I would consider yourself lucky, one way or another. Okay, so it's from 1994. Fields Aglow, The Nighttime Show. The only thing to my knowledge that could produce something so bright at night would be a nuclear bomb. But if a nuke was dropped, I guess this could be a case of quantum immortality. In that universe that you originate from, there was a big bomb at the very least that exploded nearby. And you don't remember death because the force impact is so quick and sudden that if it's enough to kill you, it's instantaneous. You simply don't perceive any pain. It's just you're there one moment and gone the next. It's almost like that, Ocean Gate or something? These rich people built a submarine to try to go explore the Titanic, but they went so low, the pressure was too much and it destroyed the craft, the submarine. But it imploded so quickly that 1 minute they were conscious and then 1 millisecond later, they were just gone. Vaporized, turned into mist. That would be very similar if you're close enough to a bomb like that. Could also be a simple explanation that it was a meteor. If you have a meteor coming in, crashing into the atmosphere and exploding into the sky, that can create a giant burst of light. Although, would it last for 5 seconds? I'm not sure. I guess if it's big enough. Though if that's the case, you would probably have heard sound, a sonic boom, a giant pressure wave that would emanate if you were close enough to see the light, so bright that it basically was daylight. It seems like other people would have noticed. You would have definitely had a record of that kind of thing happening. I mean, this happened, I think, pretty recently, a few years ago in Russia, and it destroyed glass windows and homes and cars and so on, so it seems like it could maybe fit, but also stretching a bit. Okay, so it's from 1995. Hormones fly, necklace goes bye-bye. a de-render before it even hits the ground. Normally you can track an object before it disappears. It's not right and plain in your face. People will say, oh, I dropped my tennis ball. I heard it bounce. I saw it move. Then I looked away and then it's just gone. That's what happened to me. But to see it vanish from thin air, just not even drop down, that's another level, and definitely one that's more disconcerting, no doubt about that. These cases are perfect because they really go to show there is no possibility other than it being a glitch and targeted back to you. An error correction of the glitch to reappear in a place that you would eventually check. Though it's kind of funny. Why not just make it reappear on your kitchen counter or something? Why make it reappear somewhere that you know you couldn't have put it, or it couldn't have fallen into the purse from where you threw it so long ago? They just want you to find it later on for some reason, like you weren't meant to have it right now. I don't know why, but that seems to be the case. Case once found 1996. Rural ride with a blue lights guide. Now, do you think these were effectively the soul flashes from the two people that died near there? I do believe that souls contain a great deal of energy, even just a fragment left behind. So could they produce light? Sure, why not? And it probably even is. Ball lightning sometimes. I think there is a phenomenal but natural effect of lightning condensing into a ball, depending on very specific weather phenomena and saturation of the air with water and so on. Very specific requirements. But I also think there's what looks like ball lightning but isn't, or is simply an orb of spiritual energy. And it can flash in and out. They don't typically last or linger. They're just there, almost like they're searching for their lost bodies. Or maybe trying to manifest as those bodies. Even though they're gone, spirits can manifest as the versions of what they were. Now time for the joke of the day. A slice of apple pie costs $2.50 in Jamaica, $3.75 in Bermuda, and $3 in the Bahamas. Those are the pirates of the Caribbean. The pirates. You know, that'd be something if pirates only focused on stealing pies. They would have been exterminated much faster, I would say. Inexcusable. Case notes from 1997. 2 moons, 1 night. Totally white. So there have been, rare, to be fair, instances where the moon appears to be a hologram or distorted in the sky. This is the first account I've heard of multiple moons appearing in the sky, one after the other. But then I wonder, okay, maybe there's crossover between parallel universes. I mean, it always does come back to the multiverse, doesn't it? There's different permutations of events and things in different universes, and if they bleed through, well, that could be responsible for doppelgangers, different moon cycles, although that would be a gargantuan difference. That would literally involve a different starting equation for how the moon was formed, which is speculated to be a large body crashed into the planet when it was still forming billions of years ago, and a chunk broke off and eventually formed into a circle via gravity, and that's the moon that we know. So, in this other universe, the starting parameter would have to be different for it to be in a different moon cycle now. Because again, time is concurrent within the same reference frame between parallel universes. Because there's no absolute time, always remember that. But that's something that will never make intuitive sense, I don't think. If you really understand it, I don't think you understand it. So in effect, the biggest glitch is actually that your cousin and partner don't remember it, but your father does. So you're still in the same universe, you and your father. Nothing switched there. Did you switch with your father to a different universe? Maybe, but that's still incongruent, I think. Now time for the joke of the day. My girlfriend said, "You act like a detective too much. I want to split up." Good idea. We can cover more ground that way. Always thinking like a sharp detective. Case found 1998. Mirror me at the Coffee Jubilee. So this almost reminded me of the movie Fight Club. I guess spoilers, but if you haven't seen it, come on. So in the movie, of course, Tyler Durden has a split personality, and the other character he invented, his mind created, is actually him, but he sees it externalized. And I always wonder, to what extent does that happen in real life? I know people have disassociative states, but to truly recreate an entire human being that they didn't see. Anyways, this is what I was thinking initially, but then you say that Sam, the barista, didn't even remember you going. So it wasn't a state of disassociation where you were seeing yourself across the street buying coffee, interacting with Sam. No, this must have been a multiverse shenanigans event where you were seeing yourself in a different universe. In the original universe, you didn't go, but yet somehow the coffee from that universe switched over. There's pieces that don't quite fit unless there's multiple instances of diverging multiverses where you saw a different multiverse. Somehow the coffee from that different universe came to your bag when you went back to the office. Very disjointed, but that makes it all the more unsettling. Okay, so let's file 1999. Jogger's jinx, coins in a blink. So it's true that tape eventually fades, the glue on it becomes weaker over time, but this happens so quickly, given the estimate you give, like 500 kilometers it lasting that long. The first time, well, it doesn't really make sense, does it? That these would just fall off. Plus, if it's attached to you, you would have felt it. The hairs passing by. But this does point to something very specific. Every individual categorized item, as we humans categorize it, has its own identifier within the universe's system. Because if not, the key itself would have disappeared along with the coins. But no, just the coins vanished. So something within that data was wiped away or transferred. So something specifically targeted those coins. Now time for the joke of the day. What do you get if you cut a policeman's head into 4 pieces? Police headquarters. Okay, so let's file 2000. 3 or 330? This mystery is dirty. The main piece of evidence to indicate that you're still in the same universe is your mom. She did remember you showing the picture. So somehow the data on your phone was discombobulated with a different universe's version of this image that you also take over there. In that universe, you started at 330, not 3. Although I have to admit this has happened to me in different ways where you know you confirm something in your mind. You look at something written down, or you think you locked the door. You even confirm you locked it. And then somehow you come back and it's not locked. Or you turn off the stove, you're sure of it, and somehow it's still on. Things like that. I don't know if those are all glitches. Sometimes maybe our minds are just bizarre. But given you involved your mom as well, much more likely it's a glitch. Okay, so let's file 2001. City jeans and curious queens. So this has happened to me too, where I kept going on bike rides back in Montreal, well, a suburb, Terrebonne, and I would see the same guy every time, but even though I went at different times a day, why was he always following me? And I don't think it was a stalker or anything. He would cross paths way far from where I lived, because I was biking around pretty far. So yeah, something is happening where you can get tethered, almost like you're quantum entangled with another human being, and no matter what happens, you sync up in space and time. Kinda cool. Okay, so let's file 2002. Jibber Jabber and Paranormal Clamber. Okay, this could be a scene straight out of a movie, a horror movie. And you're right, who the hell knows what he was saying? Was he actually possessed? You're also right that yeah, as a kid I used to just spit out gibberish, but it was incoherent gibberish. There's gibberish, but is coherent. Like it could be a language you just don't understand. Like someone speaking Klingon or Sumerian. Something old. Something perhaps not intended to be spoken anymore. I don't really want to think about this one too much. Very creepy. Let's lighten the mood with a joke of the day. I went to a friend's funeral and asked his wife if I could say a word. Of course, she said. So I stood up and said, plethora. As I sat down, she said, thanks. That means a lot. Case notes file 2003. Stars and scares in the Midwest airs. Well, this makes me want to go to the Midwest and just camp around and see what's out there. Because I want to see weird stuff in the sky. It's so exciting. As long as I don't get abducted or anything. So any aliens out there, I'm just looking. Don't take me. Now that said, I don't think whatever happened to these animals and the sound you heard was related to UFOs. There is evidence, some stories where aliens can interface with our minds and make us see and hear things, communicate telepathically, and perhaps more than that, induce things that we see and hear. But why would an alien want to do that to some random person in some house in the forest? No, it probably was just a spirit twisting your brain a bit and didn't like what happened to her cat, which, fair enough. But it's not your fault. Wonder how old the cat was. Probably pretty, getting along in its age, if it had an owner before that died. That's sad. Case notes for file 2004. Massive Shade and the Fear Parade. I actually think it could have been our grandfather. Our instincts are calibrated for survival. So just because you feel terrified doesn't mean there's actually a threat there. Could just mean there's an inconsistency with the environment. And everyone's tolerance for risk and unusualness in the area is different. Now, the more intolerant you are to it, the better you are suited for, ancient survival, where we were sleeping in bushes in the jungle, and so on. That's not, you don't want to be unparanoid. You want to be as paranoid as possible. But if you apply these instincts, which many people still have, to the modern world, where sometimes there could be spirits involved, I think it can lead you astray. It probably was just your grandfather. Even though you couldn't really see him, you could feel the presence being there. And he wasn't fully manifested, so that's why you thought or felt like he was larger than the doorframe. He was probably trying to manifest, but didn't understand how to yet. Case notes file 2005. Uncle's Rest, Aunt's Unsettling Quest. There have been stories like this, where people die, and they seek out a younger person of the family, and guide them in a dream state towards a funeral or back to their home, almost like showing them the sights, one last walk with the loved one. So I don't think anything nefarious was going on here. Just a way to say goodbye, in person. Now time for the joke of the day. My Korean friend died last week. So young. Just let it process. Case notes file 2006. Virus stroll turns into a quantum roll. So first, I just want to commend you for going out and trying to get stuff for you and your girlfriend, even when you're deathly sick, because I know I haven't been sick in a while, not with a cold, and you just don't want to do anything. So, damn, well done. Plus walking that long and having to walk back because the buses weren't operating, that just sucks. But the universe was like, don't worry, bro, I gotcha. Space-time portal. Engage. And yeah, just back in a flash. Nice. The universe can be helpful sometimes. Case notes file 2007. Scared twins and tattooed sins. I think doppelgangers are often in part simply us, copies of us from a different universe that got stranded here, in corporeal form, not just a soul transfer. So think of a space-time portal, but this one leads to a multiverse event, where they're stuck here. If they don't go back through the same portal, they don't go back. And I think there's a different quantum signature, if you want to say. There's a different identifier to the particles of that person. They don't belong in this universe, and we can sort of sense it. So that's why most of the time when you meet a doppelganger, you know something's off. You can't put a finger on what it is, but there's a sense of unease about it. Still, if you don't meet them, if you just see a picture, that's pretty cool. And I wouldn't mind just seeing a picture of my doppelganger. Just going about their day. Case notes file 2008. From the floor to the top with Daniel's help. How many invisible friends, imaginary friends, are just spirits lingering behind? In this case, I'm guessing a younger spirit that died and was still stuck in that area. And obviously they can manifest to individual people. I think inducing within the mind. Because really they're just patterns floating in our minds, very complex. But I suppose if you have the underlying code, when you die, your echo is given the mechanism to use that energy in the brain and just formulate a pattern of itself. So sometimes it doesn't have to manifest in a corporeal sense, or it could take a shower and eat food and stuff like that. I think that's possible too, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that probably is much more energy demanding. If you just appear via the mind, well, that's much easier. and only manifesting corporeally enough to aid the person you're interacting with, like lifting them up to the counter and to the bed and stuff like that, instead of always being manifested. I guess that's much less energy intensive. Now time for the joke of the day. When my wife had pregnancy complications, we asked for an obstetrician that was named Juan. Help us, Obi-Wan. You're our only hope. But just hope the Empire doesn't strike back. Case notes file 2009. Pregnant waddle, potty puddle. So for some reason I'm just thinking of the TARDIS, where it's a phone booth if I recall, in Doctor Who. But this one is a porta-potty TARDIS. Oh my goodness. A space-time portal is the most fitting possible event, and yet it doesn't really fit, because those don't appear on top of someone that is already inside of an occupied space and is just stationary there. And yet maybe they can. You know, it always comes back to that. Are they random or placed? And I think there's enough signs to point to they are not random. They are placed by something. Some alien or our own government. One or the other. I think that's the only explanation. Besides maybe quantum immortality, where in that other universe you jumped to, you were in the further stall. But why would you be? Maybe it was the first one was occupied, so in that other universe you waddled over to the second porta potty. But there was no real sign of why you would have died in the originating universe, so I don't know. Okay, so it's file 2010. Déjà vu, in the rear view. You were seeing your brother-in-law in a different universe as he was driving to the same destination. But given he didn't react to you, this is evidence that it is one-way sight, most of the time. If it's just your soul seeing it, then they can't see you. Best equated, I suppose, to one-way mirror glass, where they can see the reflection, everything's normal on their end, but you can see through it. Now time for the joke of the day. I just had a physical. The doctor said, "Don't eat anything fatty." I said, "Like bacon and burgers?" "No, fatty. Don't eat anything." Oh well, that one's gonna offend. Case notes are file 2011. From missing to sitting. A mystery that's fitting. The main reason I believe these are not random is simply the location that they reappear in. It's not where the object disappeared, or just in an area that you might likely find it, but could be excused as, well, we didn't really look there. This is placed in an area that the person placing it knows you looked, and there's no possible way you could have folded your clothes, put the necklace there, and then not seen it. You lost it, put the necklace back, and then think you lost it again or something. It doesn't fit, and they know that. So they put it in places where they know the person receiving it is going to think, this is impossible. Now, is that a prank? It is sort of a prank, I guess, but it's not really the reaction you want. If you're a game master trying to evoke a response, there's many ways to do it better than that, I think. So I don't know the reason they do it, but it's very clearly intentional. Okay, so it's file 2012. The anomaly of the midnight flash. Okay, so you asked about migraines and visual auras, and I do suffer from that. Now, I never really get them anymore as long as I wear sunglasses outside that are polarized and block some blue light. Pretty sure it's the blue light that does it. But anyways, block that out, take magnesium supplements every day, and I'm good. I don't get them anymore. Sometimes I still get headaches, minor migraines, but no visual auras, so that definitely solved that for myself. It's annoying having to be basically a vampire outside in the sunlight, but it's okay. I will cope. But you ask what it's like. Well, the first thing that happens is you lose processing in an area of your vision. It's not like it goes black or there's a flash. You simply can't process a point in your vision. It's very hard to describe, but it's almost like if you close your eye, one eye, it's not exactly black, it's just nothing. You don't process that side. But it's not the whole vision of that eye, it's just a tiny point. Sometimes it expands, and then eventually it'll start to almost increase in energy, and it'll oscillate and fluctuate, and then it'll be a visual aura that forms from that. And it radiates away, normally, from the center out. And then, while this is happening, normally there's no pain, but you know the pain is coming after. After the visual aura ends, and this can take 30 minutes, an hour sometimes. The vision returns to normal, but then the pain sets in, and it's an eye grain is what they're usually referred to, where the pain is focused on your eyes, behind the eyes, and so on. It's not your actual eyeballs that are in pain. It's just the stupid brain that is overcharged, basically, from that event and sending pain signals all the way. It is terrible, and the pain can last for hours and hours after. Sometimes a whole day until you go to bed and reset. That's the only thing I found is a nap can help, but only if you actually fall asleep, which can be very hard if you're in that much pain. What you described doesn't sound like a visual aura at all from what I know about them and what I've personally experienced. It was literally just the flash you described. So I don't think that's a visual aura. Now, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they can happen like that, but if you also didn't have any pain afterwards, I doubt it. Now, what this event or glitch was, I'm not sure, because as you described, there's really nothing there that could cause that flash. And nothing I can really think of glitch-wise either. It is simply a mystery. Unless it was some sort of soul that was flashing, maybe to try to manifest there's a burst of light, but that's reaching because you don't really hear that in other stories involving spirits. Now time for the joke of the day. A lot of women say their husbands never listen to them. I'm proud to say I've never heard my wife say something like that. Okay then. Okay, so it's file 2013. Deja Brew in bright pink hue. Classic duplication event. You didn't steal it, but some force stole the can from a different you in a different universe. Not that you care, because it wasn't very good, so I guess the universe was doing the other you a favor. You didn't even have to toss it out over there. Nice. But yeah. For some reason, the pink of it kinda sounds like it would taste fruity, decent, but I guess not. Too bad. Okay, so let's file 2014. The tree nap trap and the outfit swap. Okay, this one is quite unique. So he went to sleep by a tree and then just woke up inside. Did something carry him? Or did something open up a space-time portal? Now I do believe this is the same universe. He didn't quantum swap over because you saw him outside and there wasn't a reason he would be inside. And the police searched inside as well and he wasn't there. So, given all that, he simply dematerialized, phased out of the universe momentarily. There was another story about this where there was a child or a teenager or something like that was going down a slide at a water park. And of course the slides are obfuscated from the outside. You don't see inside. They're not transparent most of the time. In this case it wasn't. And the kid never emerged until like 10 or 15 minutes later. And there was even someone that went in to check and see if it was stuck inside, and he wasn't. He wasn't there. He just vanished. Until 10 or 15 minutes later, where he just comes out of the slide like nothing happened. To him, nothing did happen. So when you're out of phase, time doesn't pass in your conscious mind. Much like he said, he simply closed his eyes, and then he was inside. Something moved him out of phase, and then into space as well, inside. Why? I can process the glitch, but I don't understand the why. The why is the mysterious part, because I don't think it's random. Okay, so let's file 2015. Ring and bling. A vanishing thing. Okay, so again, the same point. Why? Duplication event. Disappearing event. They come back. Why you? Why this ring? Why? I can't say. I simply don't know. But it's so targeted and specific with who it happens to, the objects it's happened to, and, most prominently, most potently, where the object returns. Why there? There's no other explanation besides they want you to know that it doesn't make any sense, not according to the natural laws we understand. But why they want you to know that, and who they is, the game masters, angels, God. God could be a troll a troll like a prankster for all we know, I don't know. Maybe he is. Now time for the joke of the day. My girlfriend is the square root of minus 100. She's a 10, but imaginary. Case notes are filed 2016. A snap, a mark, and a kid gone dark. Did anyone else get vibes of Ghostbuster? The first one where, I forgot her name, but the woman is in her apartment and sitting on a recliner, and then just demonic hands come out of the couch and grab her. That was terrifying. At least you weren't pulled into another nether realm of hell. Or Dozer was his name? I don't remember. But I do remember the scene. I never remember names. Yeah, so it wasn't as bad as that. But still, freaky as hell. Was it just a human that broke in and was hiding under the recliner? I don't think so. Doesn't really make sense, and of course, you would have seen that after the fact. Terrifying, though. Case notes file 2017. From Bar to Bizarre, the Time Twist Memoir. You know, time anomalies might be my favorite glitch, just because it's sort of controllable in how you react to it and how you process it. Okay, you lost time or you gained time. Well, it's not that big a deal. You're just there mulling it over, and there's nothing too creepy about it. At least to me, it just is more like or when time slows down or something. It's like the laws of the universe are simply waving, almost oscillating in chaos, like many things within the universe can be chaos. But then the universe itself, maybe it's just related to the processing centers in the real world. They can't keep up, they have to make corrections, and in those corrections, normally, people's minds are altered so they don't remember it. But maybe the process doesn't always go correctly, and sometimes people do remember. Case notes file 2018. Disappearing coat, rekindled hope. That's an interesting theory, and it lends itself to the question I'm asking, why? Why would someone want to do this? Maybe they're seeing a greater picture. Maybe doing these things, replacing items, returning them in specific areas, will lead to probable outcomes in the future that benefit you. Maybe it is indeed, just like you say, something to do with your relationship with your boyfriend, and maybe returning the coat now will help solidify that relationship. I still think that's a stretch, but at least it's something to go on. Now time for the joke of the day. Cannibals aren't picky when it comes to eating people in the military. However, they do prefer seasoned veterans. Gotta get that paprika. It's like Jack Sparrow in this Dead Man's Chest, where he's just dosing himself with paprika. I believe that was a spice of choice. Dave's gonna fall off. Okay. Case notes file 2019. A pub, a quiz, and the questions that fizzed. Okay, this one is quite unique. Questions weren't asked, not verbally, but they were almost asked subconsciously, almost telepathically, but only after the fact. It's like a delayed punch where you don't feel it until later on. Very curious, of course with information instead. And it's good that you had witnesses that experience the same thing. This kind of thing can make you go crazy, absolutely. And you know, it wouldn't surprise me if everyone else in the bar experienced the same thing. But most people are just not introverts, but they don't want to rock the boat in any way in social gatherings like that. I don't think most people would ask, especially if they find out, yeah, okay, well that was weird, but the questions are coming in. I remember now, even though they were never asked. Now what could cause that? It was selective memory suppression at a local level, but probably across the entire bar, or at least across your table. Maybe there are devices, I think, that can induce temporary, short-term memory loss. But why would anyone test that in a bar? That's a weird place to test it. Case notes are filed 2020. Glitch in time, 7:30 chimed. Well, by your description, there is absolutely no way this was simply misremembering time or anything like that. No, there are plenty of events where time in a localized area slows down for the people within that reference frame. Now again, we already know that time can dilate. If you're near a gravity well, a large gravity well, your speed relative to other things in the universe is large enough that the difference to account for speed of light always being constant in a vacuum, really the speed of causality, time has to either elongate or constrict. And I know it doesn't really make sense, but that's how it seems to work. And you can picture it like if you're on two ships approaching each other at like 90% the speed of light, and you both shine a beam of light at each other, you will both measure that beam of light going exactly 299,792,458 meters per second in that vacuum, because that's the speed it always goes at. That's the maximum limit of speed, but it's an absolute limit, which is bizarre. How can that be if speed is always relative? Well, That's just how the universe works. It'll constrict time itself within your reference frame to make sure that you can always read and measure causality at the same rate. So basically, it's preserving the laws of physics for every person and every reference frame based on their motion through spacetime. I feel like I'm not explaining this correctly, though, or not simply enough. It's really hard to boil this down simply. Suffice to say, time is not absolute. Within your own reference frame, it can be manipulated. Now, as far as we know, that can only happen with great speed, relative speed. And of course, your living room wasn't accelerating at great speed as far as we know. Outside of that, or some great gravity source, we don't know any other way to manipulate time. Maybe there are other ways and we just don't know them yet. That would be interesting, for sure. Case notes file 2021. Cheddar confusion in a sealed illusion. Oh god, a cheese glitch. Cheese is the devil. If you don't know, I hate cheese. So yes, wow. All your shocked Pikachu faces are exploding right now. But yes, I don't like it. So I would have preferred that the cheese just vanishes, but whatever. Okay, it duplicated and it's in a sealed package and it's bizarre, but I don't care about cheese. So let's move on. Case notes file 2022. Koi's double plot, a fishy knot. So you mentioned that the reappeared koi had dirt on it. So it literally was duplicated from within when it was already dead. And it was literally a duplication, like copy-paste from the ground, paste into the pond. Because of the details involved, the same scratch, the same dirt, etc., it really was the same one, just the material was just recreated. It's like a blueprint for a house, and you can simply press a button and it replicates instantly. Now the data has to be there, the blueprint. But yeah, they can be duplicated. Anything, any defined object can be recreated. Now time for the joke of the day. I bought a horse and my girl asked if I was going to race him. Not at all, I said. That horse is way faster than me. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.